This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome once again from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, is Evan Jansen. The show is always live. It's broadcast from our studios right here in Auckland Park. Don't forget, between 9 and 12 every weekday morning, you can also watch us on our streaming facility on YouTube. You can watch us back anywhere in the world on demand later in the day. All you have to do is type in Newsroom and the date. We pop up and you can watch that stream live. Today, our question, what are your fears around the spread of the Zika virus? Yes, there's lots of information and misinformation doing the rounds. We'll keep you in the loop on the show as we continue with that as our focus today. First up, though, let's go to the news desk with Elvis Presley.
Thank you, Eben. Let's take a look at all your top stories this morning. All search and rescue operations remain suspended at the Lily mine near Barberton in Mpumalanga due to another cave-in. Nigeria are in talks with major oil companies to invest in refineries and repay $4 billion the debt accumulated from years of mismanagement. And the Japanese GDP data shows that the economy is shrinking more than expected, adding to fears of a global slowdown. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you, Kendall.
Thank you very much, Elvis, and a good morning to you as well at home. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
De Villiers. A little dab, fist up in the air.
Captain A.B. de Villiers smashed an unbeaten 101 in his 200th ODI to lead the Proteas to a 5-wicket victory over England and a 3-2 series win at Newlands.
He does! Kemo Paul and the West Indies.
It's not all doom and gloom for West Indian cricket as their under-19 side smashed India by 5 wickets to win their maiden World Cup title in Bangladesh.
Fantastic feeling.
And in the Absa Premiership, SuperSport United grab a much-needed 3 points in the Tshwane derby to help new coach Stuart Baxter settle in.
And Charles Schwartzel wins again in South Africa.
And around the corner, Charles Schwartzel wins his 11th European Tour title, taking the Tshwane Open by 8 strokes. That's what we have for you in the sports. Be sure to stick around about 10:20 or so. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Now, all search and rescue operations remain suspended due to another cave-in at the Lily mine near Barberton in Mpumalanga. This is our top story. 3 staff members are still trapped underground. They are in a container which disappeared into a sinkhole 10 days ago. A huge part of the eastern side wall caved in early on Saturday morning. International and local experts are yet to determine if it's safe for rescue operations at the Lily Gold Mine in Barberton and Mpumalanga if it should resume. The search for the 3 trapped mine staff members were halted at the weekend after fresh rock falls. Mine management is expected to address the media later today. International specialists who joined local specialists yesterday confirmed that the pit area is unstable. The staff members have been trapped for 10 days, and mine authorities say the whole area around the entrance to the mine is quite unstable and more cave-ins are expected. Now, for the latest on the Lily mine disaster, let's now cross live to Barberton and Mpumalanga, where our reporter, Sipepile Kunene, is standing by. Sipepile, a very good morning to you. And can you tell us what is the current situation at the mine?
Morning, Elvis. We've seen a lot of machinery coming in this morning, maybe to help with the rescue operation when it resumes. And we've seen Minister Batabile getting in. We've just seen her entourage getting in. They're expected to be here to assist with families as well as to provide counseling, to assist the mine in continuing with the work to rescue the 3 that are trapped underneath. Late yesterday in the afternoon, there was another rockfall that sent the families helter-skelter because they didn't understand what was going on, and they were at a point of despair because when the rock fell, they were seated next to where it was. They actually felt the vibration, and they ran out of their mine premises. They were seated outside the gate for a while, and then they were moved back to another side where the mine isn't operational.
Now, what can we expect today?
Today we're expecting the minister and the two ministers, the Minister of Mineral Resources as well as the Minister for Social Welfare, the company, AMCU, and every other party involved from provincial government to have a meeting in which they will find a way forward and decide with the findings that were brought forward by the experts upon assessing the rock as well as the ground. What's the way forward? What do they do? And we're expecting the mine to address us, give us a brief later on.
Now, the international experts that were brought in, is that, are they helping, and what is the situation there? Are they expecting that they will get to the miners sooner than later?
They haven't given us their word on that. They haven't said whether or not it's possible to get to the miners earlier than today, or they haven't told us whether they'll get to the work anytime today. And until we get the brief from the mining authorities, that's when we'll be able to tell a good story as to what happened and what's going to happen from now on. What we know is that the families are in despair. Even the community at the moment isn't sure of what's going on. They don't want to lose their jobs. 95% of the people that work here are from around the place in Louisville. Where they stay, it's very rural, and their only hope for income is such mines. If this mine closes, their hope is gone.
So operations at this point in time has been halted?
Yes, they remain indefinitely stopped.
And that's our reporter there at the mine to give us an update, Sipapile Kunene. Thank you so much, coming to us live from Barberton in Mpumalanga. Now, the Democratic Alliance MP Glenys Breytenbach will appear in the Pretoria Magistrates Court today to face charges of defeating the ends of justice. Now, this comes after she allegedly failed to cooperate with the National Prosecuting Authority while she was being investigated for alleged misconduct 4 years ago. The National Prosecuting Authority has accused her of erasing important information from a laptop. Meanwhile, the NPA spokesperson Luvuyo Mfaku has dismissed claims by the DA that its decision to lay charges against Breytenbach is politically motivated. The ANC in Parliament says charges against Breytenbach are so serious that they warrant her suspension as an MP. The World Health Organization has declared the Zika virus an international public health emergency, prompted by growing concern that it causes birth defects. As many as 4 million people could be infected by the end of the year. Officials at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention have urged pregnant women against travel to about 24 countries, mostly in the Caribbean and Latin America, where the outbreak is growing. Our producer, Giffen Gobeni, takes a closer look at the recent outbreak of the virus. Well, it seems like we haven't got that package, but we'll explore that theme today. It's on Zika virus, and we're asking you also a very important question that we pose to you, and that is, of course, your views and your thoughts on the Zika virus. Should we be worried? What are your fears around the spread of the Zika virus? You can let us know on the Facebook page at, in fact, on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on our Facebook page. If you like us there, you become part and parcel of the growing family here on Newsroom. But right now, it's over to you, Eben.
Yeah, thanks, Salvas. Unfortunately, we couldn't show you that package, but let's get straight into our theme, which deals with the Zika virus today. We're now joined by the Health Minister, Mr. Aaron Motsoaledi, here in South Africa, from the capital, that's our studio in Pretoria, to talk to us about the Zika virus. A very good morning to you, Mr. Minister. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Iban, and good morning to the listeners.
Mr. Minister, if I can ask you your your information with regards to where the world is with the Zika virus. Can you give us that update first thing this Monday morning?
Well, we just know that it has spread to about 34 countries around the world, mostly in the Americas and some in the Far East. And we know that the World Health Organization has declared it of international emergency, an instant of international emergency. That's what we know up to so far. And we know that also that it is associated with the condition called microcephaly, malformations of the brain where children are born with small heads.
The spread of the virus is what is causing concern now, not just in South Africa, but the world. South Africa, talk to us, Mr. Minister, about South Africa's plan in dealing with the spread of this virus, or even making sure that it doesn't get to our shores.
Well, even I'm sure whenever there's a disease anywhere in the world, people have got the right to get scared, especially after what happened with Ebola. But we also want people to get the correct facts before they associate any disease or they liken any disease to what happened with Ebola. First of all, let's get this clear. Zika doesn't kill. Nobody has ever died of Zika. The biggest problem, because the symptoms are self-limiting, the symptoms of headache, general body pains, fever, joint pains, they are all self-limiting. They go on for 2 to 7 days. The biggest problem we're having are the malformations in pregnant women only. I think that's the first thing I want to say, because many people might believe that Zika is suddenly this biggest killer in the world. It's not. Since 1947, when it was discovered, there's not a single person who died of Zika, except that the children with malformations, of course, will die because of the malformations. But any other adult who get infected, it's not a problem for them. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is the manner in which it spread. Unlike Ebola, where it could spread from one person to another, it has to be spread by mosquitoes. In other words, if I come from Brazil to South Africa and I'm infected with Zika, before that Zika can come to you, there must be a mosquito between us. There must be a mosquito which bites me and then come and bite you and infect you with the disease. And that mosquito is not any mosquito. It's not any mosquito. For instance, it's not the mosquito that is spreading malaria here in South Africa. It's a specific mosquito called Aedes aegypti. And the subspecies that spreads Zika, we don't have it yet in South Africa. We don't have it yet, but we do have Aedes aegypti. We don't have it yet because the same subspecies is spreading yellow fever. You know we don't have yellow fever at all. The same subspecies is spreading dengue fever. You know the last time we had dengue fever in South Africa was in 1929. It was brought in by tires that were, second-hand tires that were imported. Since that time, we've never had it. We don't have the disease called chikungunya, which is also spread by the same virus. So we are comfortable that at the moment, the conditions do not exist in South Africa in the way that they exist in countries like Brazil and all the other countries where Zika has spread.
Are you happy? You mentioned all this wonderful information. Are you happy that enough is being done in South Africa to spread the word, as it were, to make sure that people are educated with these facts that you just mentioned?
Well, I'm sure interviewing me over the radio is also one way of educating people. But we don't to unduly, scare people off, all that is happening in South Africa, if I may state, that countries must be ready, is to intensify our surveillance activities and to make sure that we enhance, we implement vector control measures, which we have been doing in South Africa in terms of controlling mosquitoes. We have been doing that for ages and we have been doing it very well. You might remember that in January, President Zuma got a prize from the African Union and from the Secretary General of the United Nations for our efforts in controlling malaria through vector control, of mosquitoes. So controlling mosquitoes is nothing new to us. It's something that we do every year, and we do it very well, and we'll continue doing that. What citizens must do is just to make sure that they do everything in their power to avoid mosquito bites, and they've been doing so for ages at any rate. So basically, there's not much new for us in South Africa.
Mr. Minister, I wanted to ask you about the Olympics in Brazil a little bit later this year. Now, we know we're sending a big team of athletes there, and it's going to be right at the epicenter of where this outbreak has been. Are you concerned about our athletes, and have you been in contact with SASCO maybe to give them some advice?
Well, they have been given advice already. We did not unduly panic. We told you the whole Zika virus burns itself out very quickly. There's a very, very high possibility that by the time the Olympics start, it will have burned itself out and be gone. But be that as it may, all that we are going to tell the athletes when they leave here is to make sure that they do everything in their power to protect themselves against any mosquito bite. That's all that we are going to inform them. That when they arrive there, they must make sure that they've got mosquito repellents. And most of the time, by the way, even these athletes, whenever their sports like Olympics are in the center of big cities where you don't usually find mosquitoes. They are not usually exposed to areas like informal settlements where there's static water in cans and old buckets and old tires. They are usually in the center of the cities, in the hotels where they are mostly safe from mosquitoes. I don't want to say we must just sit and relax, but we must bring all those factors into consideration. That when you visit, for instance, when many people visit South Africa and visit OR Tambo and Johannesburg, they hardly ever think of malaria, because that's not a place where you'll find mosquitoes. But we do have mosquitoes that are spreading malaria in South Africa. It will worry people who are in the borders around Vembe district, around Mobani, around Kanyakude in KZN, around the areas around Mpumalanga. But here in the center of Johannesburg, we don't usually associate it with malaria. So the same as this Zika, we don't usually sit in the center of cities like Sao Paulo and start getting worried as a visitor. But we will give them precautions on exactly what is that which they need to do to protect themselves.
Mr. Minister, thank you for giving us the information this morning, keeping us in the loop. That is South Africa's Minister of Health, Mr. Aaron Motsoaledi, joining us from the capital in Pretoria. Now, the Zika virus has caused quite a bit of consternation, as you can understand, especially in Africa, on the back of the Ebola virus and the thousands of deaths that we've seen. We're asking you today, what are your fears around the spread of the Zika virus on the continent? Now, we've heard what the Minister said. It's no time for us to be hysterical about this. No deaths have been reported because of this. However, a little bit earlier, Elvis spoke to Dr. Sarah Louise Barber from the World Health Organization. She's the WHO representative in South Africa. And he started off by asking her about the prevalence of the virus.
The geographical expansion of the Zika virus is growing. We now have 34 countries who are reporting transmission of the Zika virus. 26 of those countries are in the Americas. We have another 5 in the Western Pacific, Maldives and Thailand in Southeast Asia, and 1 country in Africa, Cape Verde. There is an intense effort, particularly in Brazil, to look at the over 4,700 cases of microcephaly and to try to examine how many of these cases are true cases of microcephaly and linked to the Zika virus. So out of the 4,700 cases of microcephaly that are suspected and have been reported in Brazil, they have investigated just over 1,100 of those cases in detail, and 404 of those cases were confirmed to be cases of microcephaly. And of those cases, 17 had presence of Zika virus infection. So we're trying to study the Zika virus and confirm or dispute the linkages with the microcephaly and Guillain-Barré syndrome.
So at this point in time, the virus is contained in North and South America. It hasn't spread to Europe and Africa as such?
No, right now there are 34 countries. Most of the countries are in the Americas and Central and South America, 26 of those countries that we're seeing transmission in 2015 and 2016. We do have other countries, 5 in the Western Pacific region, mostly the islands, the Pacific Island countries, 2 countries in Southeast Asia, and 1 country in Africa, Cape Verde, has reported about 7,000 cases of Zika.
Mm-hmm. Should we be concerned, Doctor?
There was an announcement by the WHO Director General and the WHO Regional Director for Africa advising countries to practice precautions. Zika virus is essentially transmitted through a vector, a mosquito, and the distribution of this mosquito is quite wide. So the primary vector, the Aedes aegypti, does have a distribution around a wide band across the equator. So the distribution of the primary vector is quite wide, and the distribution of the secondary vector, the Asian tiger mosquito, is even wider. So this implies that these countries where the vector exists should be looking at vector surveillance. They should be monitoring the distribution of these mosquitoes and also putting into place good systems to monitor birth defects, in particular microcephaly.
Now, there's a warning issued to pregnant women to avoid traveling to the affected countries. And on the weekend, Colombia has reported that about 5,000 pregnant women are affected or infected. Why are pregnant women more at risk?
Well, what we're seeing is that essentially it is possible, once women are infected with the Zika virus, that they can transmit this virus to their unborn child. And of course, the public health emergency of international concern is focused not only on Zika, but the linkages between Zika and microcephaly, which is essentially a condition whereby a child is born with a smaller than normal head. And in some cases, this implies slower brain growth. And so the concern really is the linkages between Zika and these congenital malformations.
Mm-hmm. Is there a vaccine for the Zika virus as yet, Doctor?
There is no vaccine. However, 15 companies have now expressed an interest in investing in vaccine research and development. 2 of those companies are the most promising. One is supported through the NIH, the US NIH, and another is in India. And the U.S. government has reported that they will start trials in animals this summer. However, we do not anticipate that large-scale human trials would be underway for another 18 months. So we're hopeful about a vaccine, but we do not anticipate that the vaccine will be the answer anytime soon.
What are some of the preventative measures that women can follow in order not to contract the Zika virus?
Well, first and foremost, we need to look at eliminating the breeding sites of these mosquitoes. These mosquitoes have become very tough. The Aedes aegypti essentially live in close proximity with humans. They've learned to survive in very small pools of standing water. So we need to try to eliminate the breeding sites through insecticide, through larvicide, through cleaning up our environments, making sure we have no standing water around our homes. In addition, people need to reduce their contact with mosquitoes. So we can do that through repellents, through wearing long sleeves. These are day-biting mosquitoes, and so people are advised essentially to sleep under bed nets when they rest during the day. So people are advised to take precautions to eliminate the breeding sites and also wear protective clothing and protect themselves from getting bitten by mosquitoes.
Well, that interview took place a little bit earlier this morning. Of course, our theme today is the Zika virus. What are your fears around the Zika virus? That's what we're asking you. Of course, our minister here pointed out to us that you can't die from the Zika virus. So there's no need for any hysteria. However, there's lots of information that you can get. That's the question. What are your fears around the spread of the Zika virus? But let's move on and take a look now at the front pages from around the globe. We start in Europe, where the Times reports that world leaders were scrambling last night to prevent a Syrian ceasefire from collapsing before it even begins, as Russia and Turkey launched huge military operations in the north of the country. Then, moving to Israel. The Jerusalem Post says at least 6 people were killed and several more badly wounded when a bus smashed into a flatback truck on Route 1 near Latrun, west of Jerusalem yesterday. Then, the South China Morning Post reports an Indonesian court yesterday sentenced a Hong Kong drug gang leader to death after he was caught with more than 860 kilograms of methamphetamine in one of the country's biggest drug busts in years. Well, time now for us to take a look at the comments. Now, I can tell you more than 5,000 pregnant Colombian women are infected with the mosquito-borne Zika virus. The country's National Health Institute said over the weekend as the disease continues its rapid spread across the Americas. Lots of concerned comments around this. This one from Sipo talks about the Zika virus is not yet in Africa. I repeat, Zika ain't gonna be in the motherland. Can't face age, Ebola. You can't die of the Zika virus, Sipo. That's the word from the minister. So I think that's pretty rock solid. Laurent says more than 200 Pennsylvania college students report mystery stomach illness. Hawaii declares a state of emergency over the Zika virus. Dengue fever, he alludes to, must be next. Then Crystal talks about Breytenbach News. I thought Zika originated in Africa, then spread through the Caribbean and South America. Yes, it's always blame Africa, Crystal. It's the easiest thing, isn't it? Greg O'Brien talks about Zika virus outbreak, raises concerns for Rio 2016. Cyclists, all athletes. But the minister pointed out it is not a life and death matter, and it shouldn't be concern around that. But let's take a quick look here now what's happening in the courts here in South Africa. Right here, we'll start in Pretoria. Former National Prosecuting Authority prosecutor and DAMP Glynis Breytenbach are expected to appear in the Pretoria Magistrates Court. The MPA took the decision to charge Breytenbach with contravening the MPA Act by allegedly refusing to hand in her work-issue laptop and removing evidence from it while she faced an internal investigation for misconduct several years ago now. Then we move to Bloemfontein. The Supreme Court of Appeal will hear arguments on the legality of the tribunal investigating charges of misconduct against Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe. Interesting. We should be live there at about 10 o'clock for an update. It should be interesting what comes out of that case. Now, time for a break. Newsroom will be back right after this.
Technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming.
Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.
We continue with our theme today on the Zika virus. And of course, we're asking you a very important question today. We're asking you if you should be concerned and should be worried about the Zika virus. There it is on your screen. You can let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. But staying with the Zika virus, and to give us an in-depth look into the virus, we're now joined from our Pretoria studios by Professor Janusz Paweska. Now, he's the head of the Center for Emerging and Zoonotic Diseases at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. Professor, very good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Now, Professor, just for confirmation and for those that have not been following the show, can you just explain to us what is the Zika virus and how does one contract it?
Zika virus belongs to the family Filoviridae, and the first member of this group of viruses was isolated in 1927. That was a yellow fever virus. So Zika belongs to this group of viruses, and other examples are also dengue, Western Nile, Japanese encephalitis, and St. Louis encephalitis. Flaviviruses are mostly transmitted by arthropods, like, for example, mosquitoes, but also some of them also ticks. So this is not the virus which we didn't know about. It's actually came to science, to our knowledge, almost 70 years ago. Belongs to the group of RNA viruses. Is an envelope virus, a spherical virus, and is transmitted to humans by the bite of mosquito, or certain mosquito species.
Now, we even had some comments this morning that it emanated from Africa. Is that correct, or is that just a misrepresentation of the fact?
Yeah, that's true. This virus was first isolated in 1947 in Uganda, and subsequently was isolated, or the evidence of its circulation was shown in other African countries, Central African countries and West African countries, and eventually it spread to Asia, from Africa to Asia. Mm-hmm. Now, so as far as we know, this virus has got an African origin.
Mm-hmm. So what are the symptoms then, Professor, and how can one diagnose it?
The symptoms are usually very mild. They include headache, they include fever, a moderate fever between 37.8 to 38.5, but also a skin rash. What is characteristic that you also may have joint pain, especially small joints of the legs and foot. The rash, the skin rash, is not quite characteristic. It's maculopapular rash, which can be caused by many other infections and conditions. And basically, this is the set of the major symptoms. Obviously, some people can develop also conjunctivitis, pink eye, and very rare, there is some gastrointestinal disorders.
Is it treatable?
So there is no specific treatment for Zika virus infection. There is no specific antiviral or specific vaccine, but most of people recover themselves. So it's kind of a self-limiting influenza-like febrile infection. Usually after 7 days, most of the people recover and they don't show any more symptoms. And what is also important to know that most cases of Zika infection are actually asymptomatic. 80% of people who are infected with the virus will not develop visible symptoms or signs.
Mm-hmm. Now, there have been some reports that the virus can now be transmitted through sexual intercourse. Has that been verified?
That still has to be verified. There are some data which show association of Zika infection and sexual transmission, but so far we know only about a few cases. It is possible that during the viremic stage of infection, at the time where the virus is present in the blood, it could be spread to the testes and then persist there for some time, and then can be shared via semen. And obviously that is a little bit of concern, but this is definitely not the major mode of Zika transmission to people.
Mm-hmm. Cape Verde has been identified as one of the countries or one of the islands close to Africa, and of course one other country in Asia. But most of the virus is spreading in the Northern America and Southern America. So tell us about South Africa. Should we be worried about contracting the Zika virus?
Zika pandemic, let's put it this way, is of international concern. And as you know, it has been declared by the World Health Organization as a public health concern of international spread. So obviously, to a certain extent, we also concerned, but there's no evidence for Zika infection in South African population. There's no evidence that the virus circulates in our local mosquito populations. So obviously, although we are concerned, we are not at a high risk of Zika introduction. There were a number of recently published risk models based on the distribution of the major and primary mosquito vectors of this virus, and South Africa is not within the range of countries which are classified as a high risk. And this is due to a number of reasons. This is related to the distribution of the primary and secondary vectors, but also this is related to the fact that here in South Africa, although we've got the species, the Aedes aegypti, present in some areas of the country, but this is another subspecies that involved in spreading the virus in South and Central America. And also probably the kind of a vector preference or host preference of the subspecies which you have is a little bit different. So to summarize, obviously we have to be prepared. And we have to be prepared because the emergence of new viruses is actually ongoing. Almost each year we've got the emergence of a new virus. Last year we dealt with Ebola outbreak, and this year is Zika, and probably there will be another more disease outbreaks which we have to deal. But we are prepared. The National Institute for Communicable Diseases provides the diagnostic service, but also provides the updates. We do have on our website a press room, and we publish on a regular basis the bulletins and alerts with information about the Zika distribution in the world is updated, and so forth and so forth.
Professor, thank you so much for your time. Now that was Professor Janusz Pawelska, the head of the Center for Emerging and Zoonotic Diseases at the NICD. Over to you, Eben.
Yeah, thanks, Alva. Search and rescue operations have been halted at Lily Mines near Barberton due to a third collapse now. We saw earlier 3 workers, Pretin Kambule, Solomon Yarende and Yvonne Mnisi, remain trapped in a container underground for a 10th consecutive day now. Now, let's take a look at some of our comments with regards to this very sad story. I came to say, it says, the Lily Mine issue is making me so sad. Hasn't it been over a week now, guys? Those 3 trapped miners are probably already done for. Yeah, that's what you can say on social media these days. Timothy Slachwayo says, ish, the Lily Mine situation is really sad, guys. Day 10 now, Timothy. Then Simply Cello says, this whole Lily Mine story drives me nuts. Someone must be held accountable for this. It's an accident, Cello. Lynette says, Lily Mine rescue operations remain suspended at the gold mine in Barberton as the ground continues to be unstable. Yes, we've had a second and third collapse. They're very dangerous. Let's go to Newsroom's Facebook page quickly to tell you what is happening there. Now, today, the World Energy Council will launch its shale gas report at the Africa Energy and Davos Africa Gas Forum in Sandton, Johannesburg. Then we see that a church that operates from Ngobo in the Eastern Cape has raised eyebrows after more than 22 children have been prohibited from leaving. And finally, we see the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa has urged African countries to develop innovative institutions, effective processes, and flexible mechanisms to achieve transformational change. All of those and more on Newsroom's Facebook page. Time for a second break. When I come back, We're talking to SASCO about our Olympic team going to Brazil. Concerns about the Zika virus continue to affect them, maybe even psychologically. We'll find out after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Hello again. If you've just joined us now, the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee, SASCO, says it's keeping a close eye on the Zika virus threat as the Rio Olympic Games approaches. SASCO President Gideon Sam says they're going ahead with preparations while taking guidance from health authorities. Now, for more on this, we're joined from our Durban studio by Dr. Kevin Subban, who's the Chief Medical Commissioner at SASCO. A very good morning to you, Dr. Subban. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Tell us, Doctor, preparations for Rio 2016, is it being affected somehow by this looming threat of a Zika virus?
Well, basically, our primary aim is to keep our athletes safe and healthy. And so we are using a lot of the information got from the local organizing committee in Brazil, their health authorities, our health authorities, with our National Institute of Communicable Diseases, and we're keeping a close eye on it. Because, yes, certainly it's a global phenomenon and it needs to be addressed appropriately, and I think we at SASCO are waiting for more information and we are preparing our athletes in this regard.
What are the Brazilians saying, Doctor, with the word coming out of them treating it and the spread of the virus, because it is spreading throughout the Americas right now?
Yeah, well, from the local organizing committee, we've been getting information that they, in conjunction with the World Health Organization, have been monitoring the situation. Yes, it's the epicenter of the infection. However, they are putting in measures that's going to limit or try to limit the exposure that our athletes have. And in this instance, in this regard rather, it's preventing being bitten by the mosquitoes. So they have put measures where they are have engaged their defense force as well to try and go out to spread the information about the virus and educate the people about stagnant water, etc. And also they are fumigating areas where there's a lot of these viruses, and there's a lot of water in Brazil, as you can expect, or in Rio rather. And in that regard, we are worried about our athletes in general, because there are a lot of water sports that we are taking part in, like open water, our rowing, etc. And then in particular, if you're looking at where the actual athletes' villages settle, there's a lot of water there as well. So, but in saying that, the Olympic Games in August is going to be held around a much cooler climate in the winter where it's drier. So that kind of information it also helps us in making decisions.
Now, we've had an advisory coming from the United States that as it tells athletes to pull out of the Olympics if they're concerned about contracting the virus. Kenya have gone on and they're actually threatening to pull out of the games if the virus is not contained. Will SASCO ever consider pulling out if there is risk that this virus is not contained?
No, that hasn't been put on the table just as yet. Because, as I said earlier, we are taking direction from the health authorities, and including the World Health Authority, like the World Health Organization, the department, our Department of Health, and the Department of Health in Brazil. And none of those organizations have ever even thought about cancelling the games, neither did, and there's no sort of travel ban. Our health authorities haven't put a travel ban. Yes, they have put limitations with respect to pregnant women, and have given advice regarding exposure to the mosquitoes. So they ask you to wear long sleeve clothing, use insect repellents in your room, on your skin, etc. So taking these kind of precautions will prevent you getting bitten. So in saying that, to answer your question, is that no, we haven't. It's never been considered that we will not go to the games. Well, not at this point anyway.
Do you think there could be a mental effect with our athletes in their preparation?
Well, obviously there is. I mean, the epidemic's been in the news a lot, and athletes obviously are worried about their health in general. Not only athletes, I think the general team management, managers, coaches, etc. And if you look at the symptoms that you can get from a typical viral infection, it's certainly going to impact on your performance, the fever, the muscle aches and pains, the joint pains, the headaches, the conjunctivitis, the redness of the eyes. All of those things can contribute to an athlete not performing. Yeah. So an athlete will always be wary of the fact that, look, I mean, I'm going to an environment where there's exposure to these kind of things, and it's certainly going to impact on their psyche. But we at SASCO are going to put out sort of information to them in trying to allay their fears, but being vigilant at the same time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sibben. I thank you for joining us, coming to you live from our studios in Durban this morning. That's Dr. Kevin Sibben. He's the Chief Medical Commissioner at SASCO. That's the South African Sports and Olympic Committee. Now, just to recap this story for you, the World Health Organization has declared the Zika virus an international public health emergency, prompted by growing concern that it causes birth defects. As many as 4 million people could be infected by the end of this year. Officials at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have urged pregnant women against travel to about 24 countries, mostly in the Caribbean and Latin America, where the outbreak is growing right now. Now, our producer, Gift Ngobeni, took a look at the recent outbreak.
Kilometers away from Africa, 100 pregnant women in Cape Verde capital Praia have contracted Zika. The mosquito-borne virus was first identified by two Scots, virologist George Dick and entomologist Alexander Hedo, in a forest near Entebbe in Uganda in 1947. It has shot to the top of the global health agenda after an outbreak in Brazil was linked with a surge in suspected birth defects. And nearly 70 years after its discovery in Africa, it is threatening to return to its roots, this time apparently in a changed form, causing large-scale outbreaks. Global health experts say it could have unknown consequences in African countries ill-equipped for another public health emergency. Cape Verde Health Ministry representative Dr. George Barreto said measures have been stepped up to deal with the virus on the volcanic archipelago of Cape Verde, 570 kilometers west of Senegal.
Nós pedimos para reforçar aquilo que já era recomendado pelo Ministério da Saúde, né? As grávidas devem fazer pelo menos 4 consultas.
We've been asked to reinforce what was recommended by the Ministry of Health. That is that pregnant women should do at least 4 prenatal consultations, and if necessary, they will have access to more consultations. They should do some scans, at least 2 scans or 3 scans, 1 per trimester. These are recommendations set out by the Ministry of Health, and we got a note asking their reinforcement.
More than 5,000 pregnant Colombian women are infected with the Zika virus. Zika, which has spread to more than 30 countries, has been linked to birth defect microcephaly and to neurological disease Guillain-Barré syndrome. Total reported Zika cases increased by 23% over last week's figures, while the number of pregnant women with the virus was up to 57.8%. Much remains unknown about Zika, including whether the virus actually causes microcephaly. Brazil is investigating the potential link between Zika infections and more than 4,300 suspected cases of the birth defect, a condition marked by abnormally small head size that can result in developmental problems. Researchers have confirmed more than 460 of these cases as microcephaly and identified evidence of Zika infections in 41 of these cases, but have not proven the virus can cause microcephaly.
La carne, el maíz, la soya, etc., etc.
Meanwhile, Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro says 3 people have died of complications linked to the mosquito-borne Zika virus, and the suspected cases of Zika had risen to 5,221.
We have 319 confirmed cases, of which 68 presented complications and are in intensive care.
He did not provide details of the deaths and did not mention the number of pregnant women thought to have the virus. The health ministry did not respond to earlier requests for information on the number of pregnant women with Zika. Doctors say Venezuela actually has a far greater incidence of Zika than publicly admitted, and that the leftist government is not doing enough to combat the outbreak. Chronic product shortages mean even painkillers and insect repellent are hard to come by. Patients suffering Guillain-Barré and autoimmune syndrome that can cause paralysis and has been linked to Zika are also struggling to find immunoglobulin for treatment. Maduro on Thursday night thanked Brazil, China, Cuba, India and Iran for helping provide medicines. In the United States, track and field athletes hoping to compete in the 2016 Rio say they are not concerned about the outbreak of the Zika virus and the impact it could have on the Summer Games. U.S. Olympian Shalane Flanagan, who won bronze in Beijing in the 10,000 meters, says she was not worried about the Zika virus and said she was confident authorities would have the situation under control in time.
I've been through enough Olympics with 3 of them. There's always been some concern whether every site has had their issues, and every time the media tends to build it up to be just horrendous or something going to be terrible. With China it was like the pollution, but honestly every time I've arrived at an Olympic site it's exceeded my expectations. So I'm actually not worried, because every single time that there's an Olympics there's always something that the media tends to be really worried about, but I find that the countries rise to the occasion and make things great for the athletes.
Athletes and visitors planning to come to the Olympics have expressed concern about the Zika virus. Rio de Janeiro Mayor Eduardo Paes inaugurated the Olympic Diving Center last Friday amid growing concern among sport officials about Brazil's struggle with the Zika virus as they prepare for the Games in Rio de Janeiro in August. The United States Olympic Committee told sports federations this week that athletes and staff concerned for their health should consider not going to the Games. Last Tuesday, the head of Kenya's Olympic Committee said the team might withdraw from Rio because of Zika, though officials later said it was too soon to decide on the impact of the virus. U.S. goalkeeper Hope Solo said if the Olympics were held today, she would consider not competing because of Zika. The soccer tournament has games scheduled in places other than Rio, some of which have a high incidence of mosquito-borne viruses. With a tight timetable of stadium inaugurations and test events from now until August, there is little wiggle room for events to be rescheduled, and often only one dry run for each sporting event. Despite concerns, no athletes have pulled out of the diving test event to begin this coming Friday. It's not doom and gloom, however. A task force of virologists in Sao Paulo has developed a test which is capable of detecting the Zika virus in samples of saliva, blood or urine in just 5 hours. The test was developed from existing methods used to detect other types of virus and can also be used to detect the presence of dengue and chikungunya transmitted by the mosquito type. While most serological tests look at the response of a patient's immune system to a virus, for this test to function correctly, the patient must still be infected by the virus. It can therefore be used on people who have already recovered. Given the cost of testing, researchers often have to wait to test several samples at one time, which may slow down the overall time frame of testing an individual sample. The government believes that as many as 1.5 million Brazilians may have been infected by the Zika so far. Scientists are investigating a potential link between the infection of pregnant women and more than 4,000 suspected cases in Brazil of microcephaly. Though laboratory tests have shown traces of Zika in patients affected by the believed complication, no proof yet exists to show it causes the birth deformations or any reported deaths.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Children's rights in health are a priority in the journey of good health.
All children should have access to adequate health care, not only curative but preventative as well.
How to identify ADHD on children.
ADHD is a childhood disorder which manifests with the symptoms of hyperactivity, impulsivity, and or inattention.
Is breastfeeding still a vital nutrition to babies even today?
Breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life is absolutely crucial.
Catch Health Talk with Dr. Sello Mutawun every Saturday from 9 till 10 a.m.
Are you saying the king must go to jail? You are not royal blood, therefore you are going to serve time on behalf of the king. Where does the public protector stand on this matter? Are you with the marches, for the marches, against the march? If this is your ancestor, it is very much his ancestor as well, because this is the cradle of humankind. Is there God somewhere in your science? Drinking the blood of a person with albinism gives extra magical powers. A man of the cloth is involved here because it would mean that somehow religion is being brought into this part of the myth. What do you say to it?
Watch Question Time with me, Mpho Tsedu, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News channel.
Ahika Mano produces abstract and symbolic works of art. He called his latest collection Vote with Ink, Not Blood.
Praying for peace, literally, in my own way.
The South African film titled Luister or Listen in Afrikaans tackles issues of race in the country.
I think that the end goal is the reformation of institutional culture, but how we get there is in fact through changing the language policy so that no student is forced to learn in Afrikaans.
It's fashion designers like Julia Mpoko who are starting to pay more attention to menswear and hope to make a mark in the fashion industry.
So regardless of whether you're African, European, there's certain styles that you like. So if an African man enjoys wearing simple, well-tailored pants, then yes, I guess.
Join Refulo Mula for that 1 hour weekly dose of arts and entertainment news every Friday at 9 p.m. on Trends.
Morning Live sets the agenda for the day.
We bring you the latest local and international news.
We are on the ball with all your sports activities and results.
We give you the latest business update.
We bring you the latest weather every time.
Watch Morning Live every weekday morning at 6 o'clock, bringing you everything you need to know before you go. Sharp, sharp, 8 tada.
It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time. This is Newsroom, Jumbo Africa, and you have to stay with us until we are here until 12 o'clock. Stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. As you know, we're also streaming live the entire show now on YouTube, available on your YouTube channel. Question of the day. We're asking you, what are your fears around the spread of the Zika virus? Let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, also on our Facebook page. But before we get to the news, let's take a look at your news headlines. All search and rescue operations remain suspended at the Lily mine near Barberton in Mpumalanga due to another cave-in. Nigeria in talks with oil major companies to invest in refineries and repay $4 billion debt accumulated from years of mismanagement. And the Japanese GDP data shows that the economy is shrinking more than expected, adding fears of a global shutdown, or slowdown rather. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall what's happening on the sports front. Very good morning to you.
Elvis, good morning. It's Monday morning and it's been a very busy weekend on the sporting front. A lot of people are excited about most of the results that I'm going to be bringing you this morning. Good morning. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
De Villiers. A little dab, fist up in the air. The acknowledgement of the crowd.
Captain Navy de Villiers smashed an unbeaten 101 in his 200th ODI to lead the Proteas to a 5-wicket victory over England and a 3-2 series win.
He does! Kemo Paul and the West Indies.
It's not all doom and gloom for West Indian cricket as their under-19 side smashed India by 5 wickets to win their maiden World Cup title in Bangladesh. And in the Absa Premiership, Supersport United grab a much-needed 3 points in the Tshwane derby to help new coach Stuart Baxter settle in.
And Charles Schwartzel wins again in South Africa.
And around the corner, Charles Schwartzel wins his 11th European Tour title, taking the Tshwane Open by 8 strokes. Be sure to stick around for that in about 20 minutes or so. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. He will be back later. So, top story this hour. All search and rescue operations remain suspended due to another cave-in at the Lily mine near Barberton in Mpumalanga. 3 staff members are still trapped underground. They're in a container which disappeared into a sinkhole 10 days ago. A huge part of the eastern side wall caved in early on Saturday morning. International and local experts are yet to determine if it's safe for the rescue operations at the Lily Gold Mine in Barberton, if that should continue and resume. Now, the search for the 3 trapped mine staff members was halted at the weekend after fresh rock falls. Mine management is expected to address the media later today to give us an update. An international specialist who joined the local specialist yesterday confirmed that the pit area is unstable. These staff members have been trapped for 10 days now. Mine authorities say the whole area around the entrance to the mine is quite unstable and more cave-ins are expected. Now, earlier I spoke to our reporter following the story, Sipepile Kunene, and this is what she said about the latest rescue operations at the mine.
A lot of machinery coming in this morning, maybe to help with the rescue operation when it resumes. And we've seen Minister Bathabile getting in, we've just seen her entourage getting in. They're expected to be here to assist with families as well as to provide counseling, to assist the mine in continuing with the work to rescue the 3 that are trapped underneath. Late yesterday in the afternoon, there was another rockfall that sent the families helter-skelter because they didn't understand what was going on, and they were at a point of despair because when the rock fell, they were seated next to where it was. They actually felt the vibration, and they ran out of the mine premises. They were seated outside the gate for a while, and then they were moved back to another side where the mine isn't operational. Today we're expecting the minister and the 2 ministers, the Minister of Mineral Resources as well as the Minister for Social Welfare, the company, AMCU, and every other party involved from provincial government to have a meeting in which they will find a way forward and decide with the findings that were brought forward by the experts upon assessing the rock as well as the ground. What's the way forward? What do they do? And we're expecting the mine to address us, give us a brief later on.
Supreme Court of Appeal will hear arguments today on the legality of the tribunal investigating misconduct charges against the Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe. The case is brought by the Constitutional Court Justices Blessing Ngabinde and Chris Jafta. Ngabinde and Jafta had accused Hlophe of trying to influence them during an arms deal-related case involving President Jacob Zuma in 2007. Now, while the Judicial Services Commission set up an inquiry in 2013, they refused to testify, challenging the legitimacy of the tribunal. Ngabinde and Jafta maintained that they did not lay a formal complaint as required by the new Judicial Services Commission Act, looking into misconduct claims against judges. They are also challenging the appointment of a prosecutor as evidence leader in the matter. They lost their case in the High Court, which also refused them leave to appeal. The tribunal remains suspended until the matter is finalized. Now, for the latest on the Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe's case, let's now cross to our reporter Aldrin St-Pierre, who's standing by at the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein. Aldrin, a very good morning to you. And can you give us some background of today's court proceedings?
Well, good morning, Elvis. Yes, this is a case that dates back to 2008 when the Constitutional Court was considering an application brought by President Jacob Zuma as well as his lawyer Michael Halley when their offices were being raided by the police. They challenged the lawfulness of that, the lawfulness of the search and seizure operation, and eventually the Constitutional Court listened to the matter, and Blessing Ngabinde as well as Chris Jafta were part of the Constitutional Court judges hearing the matter, and they alleged that there was a point where John Hlophe came to them and spoke to them about this case. They took the matter all the way to Pius Langa, who was then the Chief Justice, as well as his deputy, Dikgang Moseneke, and lodged the complaint. The full bench of the Constitutional Court then decided to take the matter to the JSC, which set up an investigation into misconduct allegations against Judge President John Hlophe. That case, he was cleared of any wrongdoing. However, Helen Zille, the Premier of the Western Cape, challenged the legality of that decision that was taken, considering that she was not involved as required by law. While that matter went all the way to the Supreme Court of Appeal, which upheld and said that the matter should continue and the JSC should set up a tribunal. It eventually then decided to set up this tribunal. But now Jafta as well as Chris Jafta as well as Blessing Ngabinde are challenging the legality of that Judicial Services Commission's tribunal, considering that there have been amendments to the Act which say that there must be a formal complaint in the form of an affidavit or a sworn statement made in terms of a complaint against the President. And they're also challenging having a national prosecuting authority prosecutor leading evidence. And there they're arguing around the issue around separation of power, saying that it should be the National Assembly as well as the JSC and the President of the country that are involved in taking or removing of a judge or a judge president.
Now, what can we expect today?
Well, arguments have started right now here in court. The senior counsel representing Bess Nkabinde is currently giving oral submissions, and the issues raised here just in a few minutes of this matter starting. And of course, we need to understand that they're still applying for leave to appeal, so the Supreme Court of Appeal needs to consider that as well. And then we'll also hear some of the arguments set out by Bess Nkabinde as well as Chris Jafta. But just a quick insight to what Justice Lewis said earlier on was the issue around whether this tribunal had been set up legally. And what Justice Lewis said, that you can't say because the complaint was lodged back in 2008 and all of a sudden when the new law came into place in 2010 that invalidates the complaint that was lodged back in 2008. And that has been an argument made by the full bench of the High Court, where the two justices applied challenging the legality of the tribunal, and they lost both those cases. They lost the initial case as well as leave to appeal, and their last hope seems to be considering the fact that when Judge John Hlophe had challenged the legality around the Supreme Court of Appeal pushing for the tribunal to go ahead, the initial tribunal back in 2009 to go ahead. He went to the Constitutional Court, but then the Constitutional Court at that point said that no, we cannot listen to this matter because there are so many Constitutional Court judges involved in this case.
Can we expect an outcome today?
Well, not certainly. We shouldn't be expecting an outcome today, considering what a thorny issue this is, and it's a case of judges judging judges. And we should expect an outcome probably later this year, probably mid-June, somewhere mid this year. We should expect an outcome. And the other issue that the JSC has raised is that they want some finality to this matter. This is something that was raised by Judge President John Hlophe as well, considering that this thing is the misconduct inquiry has started back in 2009 and still to date no finality to this issue. And the other issue is the implications that it has for the public purse. Up to 8.5 million rand has been spent on this matter so far.
Eldrin, thank you so much for that update. That was a reporter on the scene, Eldrin Sempier. He is there at the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein. Another court case, Democratic Alliance MP Glynis Breytenbach will appear in the Pretoria Magistrates Court today to face charges of defeating the ends of justice. Now, this comes after she allegedly failed to cooperate with the National Prosecuting Authority while she was being investigated for alleged misconduct 4 years ago. The National Prosecuting Authority has accused her of erasing important information from her laptop. Meanwhile, NPA spokesperson Luvuyo Mafaku has dismissed claims by the Democratic Alliance that its decision to lay charges against Breytenbach is politically motivated. The ANC in Parliament says that charges against Breytenbach are so serious that they warrant her suspension as MP. South African Airways will continue to offer a daily service between Johannesburg and Sao Paulo in Brazil. This comes after the World Health Organization concluded that there was no justification to impose a travel ban to Latin America and the Caribbean due to the outbreak of the Zika virus. Early on, we spoke to the Health Minister, Aaron Motsoaledi, about the country's preparedness against the Zika virus spread.
It's happening in South Africa, if I may state, that countries must be ready, is to intensify our surveillance activities and to make sure that we enhance, we implement vector control measures, which we have been doing in South Africa in terms of controlling mosquitoes. We have been doing that for ages and we have been doing it very well. You might remember that in January, President Zuma got a prize from the African Union and from the Secretary General of the United Nations for our efforts in controlling malaria through vector control of mosquitoes. So controlling mosquitoes is nothing new to us. It's something that we do every year and we do it very well and we'll continue doing that. What citizens must do is just to make sure that they do everything in their power to avoid mosquito bites, and they've been doing so for ages at any rate. So basically there's not much new for us in South Africa.
Nigeria is currently in talks with major oil companies and banks to raise capital for new drilling and to repay up to $4 billion in debt. The head of Nigeria's state oil firm, Emmanuel Ibe Kachikwu, who is also the Minister of State for Petroleum, says that the debt was accumulated over the past years because of mismanagement. Nigeria's oil and gas output has been relatively stagnant as big offshore projects have been held up by much delayed government funding and uncertainty over fiscal terms.
The West African nation produces oil, with foreign and local firms through sharing contracts and joint ventures. However, investments have been held up because Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, also known as NNPC, has been unable to pay its part of the deals. Bills have been piling up since 2012. Kachikwu says the country's debt, as per November 2015, stood at $3.5 to $4 billion.
The more you look at businesses or projects that have very good yield, then the greater the chance that you can go to the external banking system and raise money to support it. But the target is obviously that over the 2017 timeframe, we'll begin to look to zero cash call situations where the oil companies can actually apply a PSC-type concept, even on JV acreages, be able to raise the money that they need, run the business, and then offload obviously what is entitlement of government to it through taxes.
Meanwhile, Nigeria wants to increase output to up to 2.5 million barrels per day by the end of 2016. Currently, the OPEC member pumps 2.3 million barrels per day.
Under that concept, if it works, and like I said, we're still working on it, so let's not talk too much about it. But if it works, we will have a massive increase in volumes out of those fields. We're looking at about 150,000 to 200,000 barrels from the current 40,000 to 50,000 barrels. And then we're looking at, like I said, an entry fee of maybe 1 billion, 1.3 billion. And then we're looking at cash call funding in line of about $1 billion to enable us to be able to consistently work the fields.
NNPC is also looking into revamping joint ventures with local firms to boost productivity. But this would depend on the passing of the Petroleum Industry Bill.
12 African energy ministers will attend the 8th annual Africa Energy Indaba that starts in Sandton in Johannesburg from the 16th to the 17th of February. The World Energy Council, the WEC event, is globally regarded as providing access to key energy decision makers in Africa. Our sister program Morning Live spoke to Brian Statham from the South African National Energy Association and Royal Khoza, who is the chairman of the GLOBLEC board.
Focusing quite a lot on regional integration, because there's so much needs to be done in terms of normalization of regulation and legislation to facilitate cross-border energy transactions. Because in many cases the projects on themselves are much larger than the market in any individual country. So to develop, for example, Kudu gas in Namibia, Namibia can't absorb all the product that would come out of that project, so they need to be able to sell the product into Botswana, into Angola, into South Africa and whatnot. Now the problem at the moment is we don't necessarily have the infrastructure for transmitting the power or the pipelines for transmitting gas and oil, and secondly, very often the legislative and regulatory regimes are not in harmony. So that creates all sorts of add-ons in terms of the cost for developing the project. So we're going to be talking a lot about regional integration.
Fortunately, things are improving somewhat, and we hope that there'll be greater improvement where South Africa is concerned. But lack of reliable electricity is a continent-wide phenomenon. Yeah. In fact, less than 50% of the African population has reliable access to electricity. Some, in fact, it's as low as 10%, 5%. South Africa, fortunately, up there, touching the 80s. The Maghreb region also, historically, particularly Morocco, Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia used to also have almost universal electricity, but Libya, because of some of the setbacks in recent times, also have fallen back quite a bit.
Japan's economy shrank more than expected in the final quarter of last year as consumer spending and exports slumped. Now, this is added to headaches for policymakers already wary of the damage that the financial market route will inflict on fragile recovery. The data underscores the challenges that the Premier Shinzo Abe faces in dragging the economy out of stagnation as exports to emerging markets fail to gain enough momentum to make up for soft domestic demand. The GDP contraction in the October-December period was bigger than a market forecast for a 1.2% decline, matching a fall marked in the second quarter of last year. Last month, the Bank of Japan unexpectedly cut a benchmark interest rate below zero, surprising investors with another bold move to stimulate the economy as volatile markets threaten to its efforts to overcome inflation or deflation. Now, that's all the news we have for you at this hour. Kendall Malkamata is standing by with your sports news after the break.
As stories are broken around the world, SABC makes sure you do not miss out. As the stories unfold throughout the day, News at 8 updates all newsworthy stories worldwide. Globally, we are there. Locally, we leave no story untold. Make a date with News at 8 every Saturday and Sunday on SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Good morning, welcome back. I'm Kendall Makhamate and I've got your sports on Newsroom. The top of our stories is about football. SuperSport United moved to 8th spot on the log after a 2-0 win over struggling neighbours University of Pretoria. This at the Lucas Muripe Stadium. United scored a goal in each half to give former Kaizer Chiefs and Bafana coach Stuart Baxter some breathing space.
The two Pretoria clubs who are having a bad run in the league so far this season both needed maximum points to ease the pressure. Three-time league winners United were 12th on the log before this encounter, with the University of Pretoria lying second from the bottom with just 13 points. Despite being the fourth worst scoring team in the league so far, United were already in the lead in the 14th minute after a Sibusiso Khumalo strike. Both sides created very few scoring opportunities, with United nearly doubling their lead midway through the second half. Finally, Thuso Phala got the cushion goal for United 5 minutes from time.
Went up for offside, but Thuso Phala's continued going, and Phala finds a ball, it's deflected in.
There was an injury scare in the Bloemfontein Celtic camp early in the match after a clash of heads between teammates Fistin Abdul Razak and Lerato Lamola. After minutes of medical attention, Razak had to be replaced immediately, with Lamola managing to continue with the match. 8 minutes of injury time was added in the first half, but there was no goal at the break. Celtic was kept at bay by Chippa's Nigerian keeper Daniel Akpeyi. The visitors also threatened to steal all 3 points at stake late in the match. Rulani Manzini grabbed the winner for Chippa in the 90th minute. Sfiso Ramara, SABC News.
And so here's a summary of all the results from the weekend's PSL action. Starting on Saturday night, the night before Valentine's Day, Maritzburg United 1-0 against Platinum Stars. Then Golden Arrows, they travelled to Polokwane, beating Polokwane City 2-1. Jomo Cosmos getting a rare win, beating Free State Stars 1-0. I believe it's their 4th win of the season. Then on Sunday, the 14th of February, as you just heard, SuperSport United giving Stuart Baxter a welcome present, and Valentine's Day beating Ducks 2-0 in the Tshwane Derby, and then Bloem Celtic beating Chupa United Bloem Celtic losing to Chipa United 1-0 at the Dr. Milimela Stadium. We're looking at the log standings, starting with the top 8. Top 8, you see, not much has changed. Mamelodi Sundowns, Wits and Black Ace and Chiefs are still top 4, but Golden Arrows moving upwards and SuperSport moving upwards into 7th and 8th respectively. You go through to the bottom half of the log. In the bottom half of the log, that's where you see there's been quite a lot of movement, starting through from Orlando Pirates all the way to 12th position, where Free State Stars have moved downwards to 22. Pirates are now 9th, IX 10th, 11th is Bloem Celtic, Jomo Cosmos sitting on 14th. Ducks and Maritzburg United seem very comfortable in the basement. Now, staying with results from the weekend, it was on the whole a successful weekend for South African teams taking part in CAF competitions. As you can see, CAF Champions League results. First one, Mamelodi Sundowns had to travel to Zimbabwe to get beaten. They lose to Chicken Inn FC 1-0, but Kaizer Chiefs beating Vulcan Club de Moroni 4-0. Eric Matoho getting a brace just before and just after half-time. Looking at the Confederations Cup results, Light Stars FC losing 3-0 to Bidvest Wits, and Sagrada Esperança, after all that hoo-ha, Ajax Cape Town managed to come back from Dundo, Angola with a 2-1 win. Now, South Africa's national cricket team has come back from the ashes to beat England with an emphatic 5-wicket win in the 5th and final ODI in Cape Town. The Proteas became only the 3rd team in the game's history to overcome a 2-game deficit and seal a series 3-2 win.
To the delight of the Newlands faithful, the Proteas' near-impossible fight back from 2-0 down in the series extended to the finale in the mother city. For the 3rd consecutive match, the South Africans won the toss and sent the English in to bat first. In an inspired bowling change, leg spinner Imran Tahir was brought on in the 5th over, and he immediately found the early breakthrough, dismissing Jason Roy. But AB de Villiers tried a more unorthodox strategy for the next few overs in a desperate attempt to get rid of England's most dangerous in-form batsman, Joe Root. And South Africa leaked runs as the visitors went from 15 for 1 to 76 for 1. It was the spin of Tahir that again produced a wicket for the Proteas as he trapped Root leg before for 27. Helped along by the poor shot selection of England's batsmen, the Proteas' attack ensured that they took wickets at regular intervals, not allowing the tourists to gain much momentum. And apart from Alex Hales, none of the other batsmen made any significant contributions. Hales finally converted his 5th straight 50 in the series, notching up his 2nd one-day ton with a boundary. Kaki Surabada, David Visser and Imran Tahir pitched in with 3 scalps apiece, and the English were rolled over for a well below par 236 in just 45 overs. Seamer Rhys Topley almost single-handedly brought his side back into the contest early in South Africa's chase. He scalped Quinton de Kock and Faf du Plessis in consecutive deliveries, and in his next over accounted for Riley Rousseau, reducing the Proteas to 22 for 3. But it was Hashim Amla and captain AB de Villiers to the rescue. The pair wielded the willow with both players bringing up half-centuries in their massive 125-run partnership to steer the South Africans out of danger. And when Amla departed for a crucial 59, the home side needed another 90-odd runs from the last 20 overs. De Villiers then partnered the big-hitting David Visser to take his side over the line. Making his 200th appearance in the green and gold, he made it a memorable one, notching up his 24th ODI century. South Africa coasted to 237 for 5 as de Villiers finished unbeaten on 101, with Visser on a career-best 41 as the Proteas clinched their 5-wicket victory with 6 overs to spare and an historic 3-2 series win. Samantha Mari, SABC News.
Now moving on to golf, American Vaughn Taylor has won his first PGA Tour title in 11 years after victory at the Pebble Beach National Pro-Am in California. Taylor finished the tournament on 17 under par. That's 1 stroke ahead of his compatriot Phil Mickelson. Davy van der Walt was the best-placed South African on 6 under after a final round of 2 under par 70.
Taylor started the final round 6 strokes off the pace, but enjoyed an explosive back 9, which included 5 birdies to finish the round on 7 under par 65. Overnight leader Mickelson, who was seeking his first PGA Tour win since the 2013 British Open, had an up-and-down round of 72. He stunningly missed a 5-foot putt for birdie at the 18th and then had to settle for second place. Swede Jonas Blixt finished in third at 15 under overall, while his countryman Frederick Jacobson and Japan's Hiroshi Iwata were joint fourth on 14 under. Two-time major champion and world number 1 Jordan Spieth finished in a disappointing joint 21st place on 7 under par. With the victory, Taylor qualified for the first major of the year, the Masters in Augusta in April. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
Right now, South Africa's man to beat in the world of golf, Charles Schwartzel, won the Tshwane Open over the weekend, played it at the Pretoria Country Club. The 2011 Masters champion hit a fourth round 63, carding the lowest round of the day to win by 8 strokes.
Schwartzel was hospitalized due to a bad stomach virus over the holiday season, and he missed out on the South African Open. Making his 2016 debut, the 31-year-old former Masters champion was the only major winner in the field, so it was no surprise to see him as the pre-tournament favourite. Schwartzel knows the Pretoria Country Club from his Sunshine Tour days, having won the Southern Africa Tour Championship here in 2006, and he was second on his last appearance here in 2009. Schwartzel looked rusty in round 1, but was superb on Friday, making the most decisive move of anyone in the field. He made up 6 shots on the leader Anthony Michael and continued his form into day 3, taking a single-shot lead into the final day. Schwartzel struggled a bit off the tees today, but his short game and putting were of the highest order, and he signed for a 7 under par round 63 and a victory by 8 strokes from Denmark's Jeff Winter.
Played really well the whole week. I thought today was a bit iffy at stages, but the difference today was I putted really well. I spent a lot of hours on the putting green the last few days, and working with Cheryl last night, we definitely found something, and it was a good time to find something.
Winter made up 8 places on the leaderboard today to finish second on his own after Zander Lombard faltered over the last couple of holes. Anthony Michael was third, a further 2 strokes behind. Hannes Reineke, SABC News.
Well, that's it from the sports desk. We'll be back with more sporting news at 11:30. We'll bring you some of the Super Sunday action from the English Premier League. Be sure to be back for that. And we're going to take a short break. More news coming up after this.
Get all the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back. It's still with Newsroom. Time for a story. Well, that's happening right now, developing as we speak. The case against Democratic Alliance Member of Parliament Glenys Breytenbach has been postponed now until the 16th of March. That's next month. She and her former lawyer were granted bail of 10,000 rand each. This comes after she allegedly failed to cooperate with the National Prosecuting Authority while she was being investigated for alleged misconduct 4 years ago. Now, the NPA has accused her of erasing important information from a laptop. Now, for an update on the court case, let's go to Pretoria, where Criselda Lewis is standing by this morning. A very good morning. A very good morning to you, Criselda. What's happening?
Well, a very good morning to you, Eben. As you can see here behind me, scores of Democratic Alliance supporters and members have come outside the Pretoria Magistrates Court to show support for Glenys Breytenbach, as well as her former lawyer, Gerard Wagenaar. You know that both appeared in court this morning. This was the first appearance. We're expecting it to be very brief. You know that these charges that they're facing relate to contravening the NPA Act and defeating the ends of justice. Just to bring you up to speed a bit about what this relates to, Eben. You recall back in 2012 that Glynis Breytenbach, while she was still heading the Specialized Crimes Unit at the National Prosecuting Authority, was under investigation relating to misconduct over a case that she was handling relating to one of the companies called Kumba Iron Ore. So since then, we know that there was a disciplinary hearing that she had undergone at the internal disciplinary hearing at the National Prosecuting Authority. That disciplinary hearing had found her not guilty of the charges that the National Prosecuting Authority has now instituted against her, asking the National Prosecuting Authority why they decided to institute these charges against her after so many years. They indicated that that was a separate matter. An internal matter may have found her not guilty of those charges, but what they're saying is that this is a different matter, it's a criminal matter, and they believe that they do have the required evidence to successfully prosecute Glynis Breytenbach as well as her former lawyer, Gerard Wagenaar. So we're expecting to be back at court here on the 16th of March. You would know, of course, there's been a political fray regarding the reinstatement of these charges against Glynis Breytenbach. Some saying that this is politically motivated. The Democratic Alliance certainly has said that this is politically motivated. In an election year, they say, they're also saying that these charges that are being brought against Glynis Breytenbach are as a result of, you'd know that the Democratic Alliance had been in a court battle to try and get the Deputy National Directorate of Public Prosecutions, Nomngcobo Jiba, suspended, and she'd been quite instrumental in that case before the court. So that's what the DA is saying. On the other hand, the ANC has been calling for Glynis Breytenbach's suspension, but the DA says it will not suspend her, pending, of course, the outcome of this case. So we're back here on the 6th of March. What we're expecting to also to take place here is perhaps Glynis Breytenbach to come and address some of these DA members here behind me. We understand that she's still inside court at the moment. We understand that she will address this crowd here behind us. But one of the DA members as well, who was also gathered here outside, saying that they want these charges to be dropped and they don't see any reason why these charges should be put against Glynis Breytenbach as well as her former lawyer.
Griselda, we'll wait with you for Glynis Breytenbach to come outside there, and hopefully we can cross to you live again as soon as that happens. Thanks, Griselda. We'll carry on this side. That's Griselda Lewis outside the court in Pretoria, the capital here in South Africa. We're waiting for, of course, reaction from Glynis Breytenbach, who's a Democratic Alliance Member of Parliament, after, well, we got bail this morning, and the matter will now proceed on the 16th of March. That's next month. Now, the South African Pharmacy Council has relaxed the regulation prohibiting chemists from selling HIV home testing kits for private use. Now, the law changed in May of last year, but inexplicably has only just been announced by the council. Now, the South African Medical Association, which represents doctors here in South Africa, argued that when testing at home without needing to visit a clinic, people are more likely to commit suicide. Now, for more on this, we are joined by Dr. Zika Maweya from the South African Medical Association. Doctor, very good morning to you, and thank you very much for being with us.
Good morning, Elvis, and thanks inviting us.
Eben,
okay.
Yes. Elvis is the other one.
Oh, okay.
We look very similar.
No, it's fine.
Just contextualize your position, but also how home tests for HIV will work.
Actually, our position as from the South African Medical Association is that you are actually shortchanging patients because health is a package. What we mean by that is that no, you don't only test for HIV, you test for other diseases like hypertension, diabetes, as you present yourself. But in most cases, like when you check, it's written HCT, HIV counseling and testing. So if this situation happens, what will happen is that you are actually bypassing the counseling part, which is the most important part of the test. So that's actually our concern, to say that it will actually increase a lot of suicide and even anxiety, and even coerced. People are going to be coerced to test. Like if you are my partner, I would force you to test in corners, which is not right. So actually we'll be tramping into other people's human rights, and also their what you call the things that they have to do on their own.
You're talking about the risk of increasing suicide rates with testing at home. Just explain to us your thinking around this.
What we mean by that is, you see, before when you do HIV test, you have to be cancelled. If you are alone with a kit in your corner, what happens is that you test, and then thereafter you actually get shocked when you see the results. It's human nature.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and then what happens after that? Normally, because there won't be any support system next to you, you're going to actually start having anxiety, starting having to say, you know, that denial and all those things. You go through those stages alone, and then that is not acceptable in our case. So we feel that is not right. But also, they say the stigma, which has actually increased people to say, no, because of the stigma in the health centers, why can't we just encourage people to test at home? Maybe they'll come in to actually do the tests, the second test in the hospital or clinic setup. But that to us is not acceptable.
Don't you think this is a surefire way to get more people to test? At the moment, we're battling a little bit with people going with the numbers to go and test.
Yes, in reality, it might mean that, but looking at it deeply, it might actually even increase anxiety to people, because what happens is that we are saying when you test alone, you have to go to the clinic, like it or not, because you can, and then when you arrive in the clinic, you have to say, I've done the home test on my own. Now I want to start with the antiretrovirals. There are certain tests that we have to do as well. But again, we're saying, maybe if you test alone at home, it will also increase people coming to the clinic to come and confirm what they've actually found.
Isn't this preempting matters a little bit and trying to nanny people a little bit? I mean, right now we've got pregnancy tests that works on a similar principle. Sure, people would like to have a first look before they decide on what the next steps will be.
Actually, you have given a good example of pregnancy tests. You also have diabetic tests. You also have hypertension tests at home. But the problem with HIV is that the stigma that has been attached to it, that's what makes people to be more anxious. Because the moment when you prick yourself and then you actually look at the tests, that stage which you go through is not, I mean, it's not going to be right for most of the people. Most of the people can't take it well. So that's our concern. But at the end, it's what people want, people will always do.
What about the issues of affordability and access that come directly into play? You can make it a whole lot cheaper by testing initially at home, I think one should point out.
Yeah, but remember, here we're talking about the people who cannot afford as well. The question is, how much is the test going to cost? So is that affordability going to be addressed or not? So at the end of the day, it's, yes, it will be much cheaper for the health services because it's already strained. There's shortage of health workers and shortage of and queues are longer, the waiting time and all that. But at the end of the day, it's not about the cost. It's about, like I said, health is a package. It's about how much do you get out of it rather than saying, I'm going to pay 70 rands between me and you. And another thing will be the language which is going to be written in. Most of our people can't read and write. Is it going to be in Xhosa? Is it going to be in Shangaan? Is it going to be in Venda?
But one can say that about any medicine, about any practice that's being practiced right now. Why can't we simplify the thought process around HIV?
Yes, of course, but we can do that. But the problem, like I said earlier, the problem is it comes in with a lot of emotional play in your head. That is the thing. We cannot just make HIV the simplest disease. It's not just a commodity. HIV is a package, like I'll always repeat that. So, honestly speaking, it cannot be simpler.
As the South African Medical Association, what would you then say? What must the immediate future of testing look like?
Actually, as the South African Medical Association would actually encourage people, those who are testing for the first time, they must first go for counseling. And those who are testing for the second time, yes, of course, because you know what you're going through, what counseling is, they can test at home because they know the stages of what they are supposed to be doing. So for us, yes, it must, because worldwide now, even in America, they're actually doing home testing. But for us, for now, we want everybody to be consulted, the patients, the civil society, everybody, so that it must be a package and everybody understands that at the end, we must be receptive to all these things, to the HIV testing.
Doctor, thank you for joining us today. Dr. Sizeko Maweya from the South African Medical Association believes that it could be a risk to test at the home. People could commit suicide, amongst other issues that they could face. What are your views? At SABC Newsroom, we'd like to hear what you think. Thank you once again, Doctor, for joining us today.
Thanks very much.
Now let's take a quick look at the front pages from around the African continent this morning. We'll start in Zimbabwe this morning, where the Herald reports that the Civil Aviation Authority of Zimbabwe yesterday impounded a chartered MD-11 trijet cargo plane owned by Western Global Airlines, stashed with millions of South African rands and a dead body after it asked to land in Harare during a flight from Germany to South Africa. Moving to Namibia, the Namibian media ombudsman Clement Daniels last week called for anti-racism laws to be enacted in Namibia and for an anti-racism summit to be held. Finally, we go to Swaziland. The Observer reports that police have arrested 2 people in different incidences for the unlawful possession of dagga, weighing around 165 kilograms, worth 93,000 lelangen. Those are some of the headlines around the African continent this morning. Now, here in South Africa, of course, last week, the State of the Nation address delivered by President Jacob Zuma saw a keen focus on the state of the economy and investment opportunities for the nation. He reported that progress had been made to stabilize the electricity supply in the country following the investment of 83 billion rand, and the nuclear program is still a go-ahead. Now, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank predict that the South African economy will grow by less than a percentage point this year. However, the President says that the country remains an attractive investment destination. Now, joining us in studio this morning is the Chief Economist at Investment Solutions, Lesiba Motata. Lesiba, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Eben. How are you?
Is it a normal Monday morning for you after a State of the Nation address or not?
Things elsewhere, like central banks having negative interest rates, are more top of mind. So it's not quite normal. I wish it was. Yeah.
Tell me about the State of the Nation, your views on what was delivered last week. Of course, we all heard, we all in the media fraternity understand it was an economic focus, and you know, the market nerves needed to be calmed. Did that happen?
Yeah, so 80% of the speech was really around the details of economics, which was needed. However, I just think that words are important. It's the deeds that markets are looking for now. So the president lays out a nice program, a nice detail of what's going to happen. But the devil, so to speak, in that detail is often with the ministers, and we're waiting to see what the finance ministers put down. I think there's still much more that's required. When I read it line by line, word by word. And there were about 15 points to take out, and there were 2 noteworthy outcomes. Yeah. This whole reconsolidating the legislative part of government back into Pretoria. It's interesting. Just top of mind there, it means it will take a while. Yeah. It will actually cost money to make that happen. So while we're trying to consolidate, I don't think it's really quite the solution. But the whole thing about China and $10 billion US, which came out of the COFAF conversations, I don't know. It's interesting that it's put out there because then China was talking about $60 billion US. Yeah. And part of it, about 35, was committed for loans and guarantees. What I don't have clear in my mind is this a loan from China to South Africa? Yeah. Is this a bailout? It's not very clear what the details are on that one.
Let's talk about investment quickly, because investment, or the climate for investment, to make it attractive for investors, just try to put it that way. Are we heading down that road?
You know, a lot more is required. To be honest with you, it's nice to have austerity, pulling down on expenditure. But you can do it at the peripheral of matters, or you can do it at the core. I'm yet to see that which is going to be done on the core. All the peripheral issues are important. You're going to have no wastage in terms of air travels, you know, going overseas, the number of delegates. That's all very interesting. But it's at the periphery.
Trimming the fat, as it were.
Well, it's peripheral.
It's peripheral.
It's peripheral.
What we need is
core. In the center of it all. What investors want to see is that South Africa will grow. It will introduce reforms. Yeah. And it will sustain its non-investment grade. I'm afraid the conversation from the Sona doesn't really limit that risk of being non-investment grade.
So you're saying there is still a level of uncertainty that investors are concerned about. Would that be accurate?
Definitely, because what is now on the table is that we are doing peripheral austerity, if you allow me to call it that, but we are actually even introducing expenditure on the table.
Yeah.
So we're taking away, but we're also putting back. In other words, that which you're putting in the center, which will be nuclear expenditure and how it's all going to work out, one is not very clear. That's why there's 10 billion from China to me is very interesting.
Yeah.
I need to see more detail. Is this a bailout from Beijing?
That's a tough question. Now, that question will certainly pop up in the next couple of weeks as we head to the budget. The finance minister will I'm sure, will be the one who will have to put the actions, that, as you called it, to the words that have been spoken.
Yeah.
What is your expectation, and how do you read the, let's call it the expectation ahead of the budget speech in now 10 days' time?
It's a tough one. And I must be honest, for me as a South African, I think I've got a right to have an opinion.
Yeah.
And that is to say, tax hikes are not a solution. That which has been proposed by business, it's not where we should be going. You may want to appease rating agencies in the near term, so it's a 2-year situation.
Yeah.
But after that, the same rating agencies you're trying to appease will come down on you, not with a 1-notch downgrade, but they'll be doing 4 or 5. So tax hikes are not a solution because you're eking out, you're taking out from the economy, which I don't think is a solution. So there's muted VAT, there's personal income taxes that can go up, corporate, all that. To me, I'm very dismayed that we're even in that conversation.
Now, junk status was the word before Sona, the threat of junk status.
Still there.
It's still...
In fact, you know what? If you look at what happens in the currency market, in the corporate bond market, in the nominal bond market, you even look at what's happening internationally in terms of credit default swaps, they've all priced South Africa as non-investment grade. But that's not the end of the world, because non-investment grade is synonymous to, junk, but also high yield. High yield is an important term that investors use because instead of just requiring smaller yield when you invest in a country, there's a risk premium, a higher requirement on interest that get levied on a country like that. Yeah. And South Africa could very well see that. So there's a scenario where you can get into non-investment grade junk or high yield credit rating, and it becomes a steady state and normal outcome, which is all priced in the market and we don't see a big fallout. The only problem is, the research that I've done on emerging market countries shows that when you actually get downgraded into an investment grade, many countries were coinciding with an IMF bailout. No wonder there's 10 billion. I really do want to know, well, what happened? Where does it come from? And why are we needing money from Beijing? Because Colombia, when it got into non-investment grade, actually received an IMF bailout. So did Romania. So did South Korea. Is this... I need just to find details in the next conversation.
Are you alluding to the new geopolitic of the world? That's Hlophe Motata this morning. That's a very interesting question. I suggest you write to the finance minister.
Well, I'm sure I'll find out in about 10 days, whatever.
We will see in about 10 days' time when the budget, of course, is delivered here in South Africa. It will be an interesting one. Hlophe Motata is the chief economist as investment solutions here in South Africa. Every Monday he looks at the money in the markets and gives us a little inside track as to what should be on the table. Well, bailouts on the table this week.
Well, I don't know. I need to find out.
He doesn't know. He needs to find out. That's an interesting question asked. That's where we wrap Money and Markets on this Monday morning. Let's go to Azwi for the weather.
Thanks very much and warm welcome. Let's start with the good news. We're expecting that heat wave over Gauteng and some parts of Limpopo to be until tomorrow. And on Wednesday, we're expecting temperatures to normalize and remain in the low 30s to high 20s. 30% chance of thunder showers over the central interior of South Africa, about 60 over the corners of KwaZulu-Natal and some parts of Eastern Cape for today. Partly cloudy skies over the northern parts going to Zimbabwe. Over the interior, partly cloudy but just clear over the interior of the northern Cape. We're seeing 30% chance of showers over the Western Cape for today, so please do take note of that if you will be around those regions. But the chances of rainfall are quite low, so do expect partly cloudy skies over most parts, and partly cloudy with 30% chance of showers along the coastal regions to the central interior and the southern parts of Gauteng, going to the interior of Botswana and some parts of Namibia for tomorrow. Over the northern parts of Zimbabwe, we're seeing 30 to 60% chance of thunder showers for tomorrow. Partly cloudy for today with Harare at a maximum of 30 degrees. 37 over Pretoria and Gaborone with mostly sunny skies. 30% chance of showers over Bloemfontein all the way towards Pietermaritzburg with a maximum of 28 degrees and 23 if you will be in Cape Town with cloudy skies. Towards the interior, we're seeing 30 to 60% chance of thunder showers over Luanda. Heavy rain can be expected over those regions that may lead to localized flooding. Otherwise, partly cloudy skies over most parts for today. Going to the northern parts, we're still seeing partly cloudy skies with low chances of rainfall tomorrow. Luanda still covered by about 60 to 80% chance of thunder showers and showers over those regions. Partly cloudy over the central interior. Dar es Salaam, we're just seeing cloudy skies with no rain expected over those regions for tomorrow. 30% chance of showers expected for today and drizzle over Luanda. Brazzaville and Kinshasa reaching a maximum of 34 degrees. Extremely hot conditions over Bangui at a maximum of 41 with sunny skies. Juba reaching a maximum of 40 with partly cloudy skies for today. Moving to the northern parts, we're seeing partly cloudy skies over most parts and no rain expected for today. Damascus, you can see partly cloudy skies and over Cairo as well. Tomorrow, similar conditions expected. We're seeing partly cloudy skies with 30% chance of rainfall expected towards the western parts. Your temperatures over these regions for today, we're seeing Baghdad at a maximum of 12 degrees with sunny skies, 23 over Damascus, Tripoli at 28, and if you will be in Sana'a, do expect sunny skies with a maximum of 24 degrees. Let's move towards the western parts where we're seeing low chances of rainfall along the coastal regions, your Abidjan and Lagos, partly cloudy with 30% chance of rainfall. Moving to the interior, we're seeing partly cloudy skies to clear skies over some parts and along the west coastal regions, but for tomorrow, just partly cloudy and no rain is expected over these regions and partly cloudy over the northern parts. But for Tunis, Algiers, Rabat and Marrakesh, we're seeing 30% chance of showers over those regions to drizzle over some parts. And today as well, we're seeing 30% chance of rainfall over these regions with Tunis at a maximum of 21 degrees and 11 over Marrakesh. Moving to the southern parts of those regions, we're seeing extremely hot temperatures over the interior and Jamina at a maximum of 40 degrees with 33 over Lagos, 30% chance of showers over Abidjan, sunny skies over the west coast with Dakar at a maximum of 27 degrees. That is all from the weather desk. Ndawendo.
For victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Health Talk looks into the increase of suicide and symptoms leading to suicide.
The death wish grows
when you go into depression after a lot of stress.
And often when we talk about suicide, we don't talk about a person wanting to stop living, but rather wanting to stop living in pain.
After losing everything in life that lead you to no options but suicide.
I had that spirit of fear in me to say, don't even face tomorrow.
After being overwhelmed with stress and trauma, it becomes difficult to have self-control.
People learning tools and skills that will practically enable them to meet these challenges.
In trying times, never be alone. Reach out for help to a better solution.
Support should be done by a counsellor or psychologist where you're able to speak about how you're feeling in a safe, accepting, non-judgmental space.
For all your health tips, join Dr. Silo Mutawuni every Saturday from 9 till 10.
AKA went overseas to win 2 awards for himself for Best South African Male Artist and a second one for his hit track All Eyes on Me. The Lamb film is nominated for Best Foreign category at the 2016 Oscars.
We couldn't find finance until the script won a very prestigious prize in France.
Dr. Pascal has inspired many in song and theatre presentation.
And in 1985, when I came, I went to the SABC on the radio, and I was the voice of Africa.
Catch Trends every Friday at 9 p.m.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time. This is Newsroom on the final hour here on SABC News, Channel 404. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock, and you have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. As you know, we're also streaming live on YouTube. The entire show now available on your YouTube channel. Question of the day, we're asking you, what are your fears around the spread of the Zika virus? Please let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. All search and rescue operations remain suspended at the Lily Mine near Barberton in Mpumalanga due to another cave-in. Nigeria in talks with major oil companies to invest in refineries and repay $4 billion that debt collected from years of mismanagement. And Japan's GDP data shows the economy shrinking more than expected, adding to fears of a global slowdown. Those are some of your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. Very good morning.
Good morning, Elvis. Monday morning, quite a lot happened over the weekend, and quite a lot of really interesting results came out of that as well. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
Yes. A little dab, fist up in the air. The acknowledgement of the crowd.
Captain Davy de Villiers smashed an unbeaten 101 in his 200th ODI to lead the Proteas to a 5-wicket victory over England and a 3-2 series win.
He does! Kimo Paul and the West Indies for the...
It's not all doom and gloom for West Indian cricket, as their under-19 side smashed India by 5 wickets to win their maiden World Cup title in Bangladesh. And in the Absa Premiership, SuperSport United grab a much-needed 3 points in the Tshwane derby to help new coach Stuart Baxter settle in.
And Charles Schwartzel wins again in South Africa.
And around the corner, Charles Schwartzel wins his 11th European Tour title, taking the Tshwane Open by 8 strokes. That and more we've got for you at 11:30. Be sure to stick around for it. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. there's been a high-level meeting between the Lily Gold Mine management and the Social Development Minister Breytenbach Dlamini this morning. President Jacob Zuma appointed an interministerial task team over the weekend to offer support to families of the 3 trapped mine staff members. Rescue operations were halted over the weekend after more rock falls, rendering the operations dangerous. International and local experts are yet to determine if it is safe for the rescue operations at the mine to continue. The specialists have confirmed that the pit area is unstable. Mine management is expected to address the media later today. The staff members have been trapped for 10 days now. Mine authorities say the whole area around the entrance to the mine is quite unstable and more cave-ins are expected. Now, it seems that all search and rescue operations remain suspended due to another cave-in at the Lily mine near Barberton in Mpumalanga over the weekend. As you know, the 3 staff members are still trapped underground. Now, they are in a container which disappeared into a sinkhole 10 days ago. A huge part of the eastern side wall caved in early on Saturday. The whole area around the entrance to the mine is unstable and more cave-ins cannot be ruled out. Our SABC reporter Sipepile Kunene is at the mine and she has a guest, we believe. But before you talk to us, talk to your guest, Sipepile, what is the latest on the search operation there?
At the moment, the Minister of Social Development, Breytenbach Dlamini, arrived and she spoke to the residents that are inside, families of those that are trapped underneath, and she had a meeting with the mine management as well as other stakeholders involved. The mine issued out some sort of statement because it was recorded by some media company that they've hired, where they said actually there have been 2 huge rock falls and ground falls. The fall that happened yesterday a couple of times, it was just the debris on the sides that were falling into the hole that was created on Friday the 5th when the initial rockfall happened. And the issue of the guest hasn't arrived yet because he was driving, was still on the road. He was on his way here.
I thank you for that, Sipepile. But first tell me, how is the families holding up?
Families are slowly losing hope. Even the CEO mentioned that. He said they remain positive, though hope is slowly fading away. They are not as hopeful as they were in the beginning, especially after all this debris that has gone into the hole where the container is believed to be. Hopes of finding these people alive is slowly fading away. But the management, as well as the residents and the families, are remaining hopeful. They are hoping for the best out of the situation. Remember, these people have been down there for 11 days now. They were trapped down there at 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday the 5th. Today, they're still down there. There's still no hope that the rescue mission will start anytime soon. It has been stopped indefinitely.
There was a high-level meeting with the Minister, Breytenbach Dlamini, the Social Development Minister, this morning. Is that still continuing?
Yes, that meeting is still on. They're still discussing and finding a way in which they can make one statement and find a way forward. Minister Breytenbach's main reason for being here, according to his office, is to talk to the families, give them support, also to give them counseling where it's necessary, and give them the necessary hope in terms of services that are offered by her department at such times, and also to work with the mine management as well as provincial government to help everyone move forward with the ongoing problem. The miners are still trapped down. Everyone else is praying around it. They are hoping for the best.
Sipepile Kunene, thank you so much for that update there. That's our reporter at the Lily mine in Mpumalanga. Moving on to other news now. Democratic Alliance MP Glynis Breytenbach and a former lawyer have been granted bail of 10,000 rand each at the Pretoria District Court. The case of obstruction and defeating the ends of justice against Breytenbach and Gerard Wegenaar has been postponed to the 16th of March this year. Breytenbach and Wegenaar appeared at the court. The hearing relates to a 2012 NPA investigation in which Breytenbach was being probed for misconduct. The NPA claims that Breytenbach allegedly shredded relevant papers and wiped clean her laptop while she was still the head of the organization's specialized crime unit. A few DA supporters have turned up in court to support her. The Supreme Court of Appeal will hear arguments today on the legality of the tribunal investigating misconduct charges against the Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe. The case is brought by the Constitutional Court Justices Bess Ngabinde and Chris Jafter. Ngabinde and Jafter had accused Hlophe of trying to influence them during an arms deal-related case involving President Jacob Zuma in 2007. While the Judicial Service Commission set up an inquiry in 2013, they refused to testify, challenging the legitimacy of the tribunal. Ngabinde and Jafter maintained that they did not lay a formal complaint as required by the new Judicial Service Commission Act, looking into misconduct claims against judges. They are also challenging the appointment of a prosecutor as the evidence leader in the matter. They lost their case in the High Court, which also refused them leave to appeal. The tribunal remains suspended until the matter is finalized. South African Airways will continue to offer a daily service between Johannesburg and Sao Paulo in Brazil. Now, this comes after the World Health Organization concluded that there was no justification to impose a travel ban to Latin America and the Caribbean due to the outbreak of the Zika virus. Early on, we spoke to the Health Minister, Aaron Motsoaledi, about the country's preparedness against the Zika virus spread.
All that is happening in South Africa, if I may state, that countries must be ready, is to intensify our surveillance activities and to make sure that we enhance, we implement vector control measures, which we have been doing in South Africa in terms of controlling mosquitoes. We have been doing that for ages and we have been doing it very well. You might remember that in January, President Zuma got a prize from the African Union and from the Secretary General of the United Nations for our efforts in controlling malaria through vector control of mosquitoes. So controlling mosquitoes is nothing new to us. It's something that we do every year and we do it very well and we'll continue doing that. What citizens must do is just to make sure that they do everything in their power to avoid mosquito bites, and they've been doing so for ages at any rate. So basically there's not much new for us in South Africa.
Field now. Nigeria is currently in talks with the major oil companies and banks to raise capital for new drilling and to repay up to $4 billion in debt. The head of Nigeria's state oil firm, Emmanuel Ibe Kachikwu, who is also the Minister of State Petroleum, says that the debt was accumulated over the years because of mismanagement. Nigeria's oil and gas output has been relatively stagnant as big offshore projects have been held up by much delayed government funding and uncertainty over fiscal terms.
The West African nation produces oil, with foreign and local firms through sharing contracts and joint ventures. However, investments have been held up because Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, also known as NNPC, has been unable to pay its part of the deals. Bills have been piling up since 2012. Kachikwu says the country's debt, as per November 2015, stood at $3.5 to $4 billion.
The more you look at businesses or projects that have very good yield, then the greater the chance that you can go to the external banking system and raise money to support it. But the target is obviously that over the 2017 timeframe, we'll begin to look to zero cash call situations where the oil companies can actually apply a PSC-type concept, even on JV acreages, be able to raise the money that they need, run the business, and then offload obviously what is entitlement of government to through taxes.
Meanwhile, Nigeria wants to increase output to up to 2.5 million barrels per day by the end of 2016. Currently, the OPEC member pumps 2.3 million barrels per day.
On that concept, if it works, and like I said, we're still working on it, so let's not talk too much about it. But if it works, we will have a massive increase in volumes out of those fields. We're looking at about 150,000 to 200,000 barrels from the current 40,000 to 50,000 barrels. And then we're looking at, like I said, an entry fee of maybe 1 billion, 1.3 billion. And then we're looking at cash call funding in line of about $1 billion to enable us to be able to consistently work the fields.
NNPC is also looking into revamping joint ventures with local firms to boost productivity, but this would depend on the passing of the Petroleum Industry Bill.
African energy ministers will attend the 8th annual Africa Energy Indaba that starts in Sandton, Johannesburg from the 16th to the 17th this month. The World Energy Council, WEC, event is globally regarded as providing access to key energy decision makers in Africa. Our sister program spoke to Brian Statham from the South African National Energy Association and Royal Khoza, who is the chairman of the Global Ag Board.
We're going to be focusing quite a lot on regional integration, because there's so much needs to be done in terms of normalization of regulation and legislation to facilitate cross-border energy transactions. Because in many cases the projects on themselves are much larger than the market in any individual country. So to develop, for example, Kudu gas in Namibia can't absorb all the product that would come out of that project, so they need to be able to sell the product into Botswana, into Angola, into South Africa and whatnot. Now the problem at the moment is we don't necessarily have the infrastructure for transmitting the power or the pipelines for transmitting gas and oil, and secondly, very often the legislative and regulatory regimes are not in harmony. So that creates all sorts of add-ons in terms of the cost for developing the project. So we're going to be talking a lot about regional integration.
Fortunately, things are improving somewhat, and we hope that there'll be greater improvement where South Africa is concerned. But lack of reliable electricity is a continent-wide phenomenon. Yeah. In fact, less than 50% of the African population has reliable access to electricity. Some, in fact, it's as low as 10%, 5%. Sure. South Africa, fortunately, up there, touching the 80s. The Maghreb region also, historically, particularly Morocco, Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia used to also have almost universal electricity, but Libya, because of some of the setbacks in recent times, also have fallen back quite a bit.
Japan's economy shrank more than expected in the final quarter of last year as consumer spending and exports slumped. Now, this has added headaches for policymakers already wary of the damage that the financial market route could inflict on fragile recovery. The data underscores the challenges that the Premier, Shinzo Abe, faces in dragging the economy out of stagnation as exports to emerging markets fail to gain enough momentum to make up for soft domestic demand. The GDP contraction in the October-December period was bigger than a market forecast for a 1.2% decline, matching a fall marked in the second quarter of last year. Last month, the Bank of Japan unexpectedly cut a benchmark interest rate below zero, surprising investors with another bold move to stimulate the economy as volatile markets threatened its efforts to overcome deflation. Now, on that deflating note, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back after that with your regional news with Heben.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top-quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back. Time for us to now take a more regional focus as we look, well, at the news here in Southern Africa. Now, in the Northern Cape, the Bloodhound supersonic car will not attempt the land speed record this year as was planned. This, they say, because of a lack of finance. The team, however, say they're in negotiations right now with several sponsors and hope to secure the £20 million, or around 400 million rand, they need for this record attempt. Of course, that will happen at the Pan in the Northern Cape's Kalahari Desert. Now, for more on this, here's our reporter Ulrich Hendricks in Kimberley.
Morning and welcome to Kimberley in the Northern Cape. Today we are talking about cars, but not just any cars. We are talking about what organizers hope will be the fastest car on land in the world. We're talking about the Bloodhound and the car that is hoping to set a new land speed record at Pan in the Kalahari right here in the Northern Cape. Well, there's been some news last week from the Bloodhound team. The car was supposed to, the record attempt was supposed to be this year. That has been delayed. But to talk to us about it a bit more, we have the Bloodhound's representative in South Africa, Dave Rowley. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning to you, Ulrich.
What's the latest news regarding the Bloodhound?
Well, the latest news, very simply, is we need to get in another 200 million rand, £10 million, to finish off the build of the car. It's about 95% complete. We've still got to do the low-speed testing in the UK, up to about 300 kilometres an hour, and then the car will be coming out. As soon as we've got that funding, because we're bringing a team of something like 50 technicians and engineers with the car, plus all the support kit, plus the fire tenders, the fastest fire engines in the world, all that, the team will be here for 3 months in the Northern Cape. So that on its own is quite expensive as well. So as soon as we've got the funding, and we hope that will be, the car will be out here in the first half of next year, certainly in 2017.
So if you're looking at timetables, there's some talk around about May next year. So it will come around about May, and it will spend about 3 months before the actual record attempt.
That's right. The car will run for about 3 months, and we've already worked out all the run profiles. Andy Green, the driver, is not just going to put his foot hard down on the first couple of runs. We need to make sure that all the parts are working well, the car is performing well, the 3 engines, the jet, the rocket, and the Jaguar engine that drives the rocket motor fuel pump. So there's a lot of testing to do. We will test all the major services in the UK, but then the car will come out and we'll start again, because the car has been designed to run on Pan, not a runway as we will do in the UK. So there's a lot that we need to find out about the car and how it performs on Pan, which is an alkali plier. It's a hard mud. We've got information out of the computer, but the proof of the pudding will be when the car actually runs on the pan.
You said 95% complete. What still needs to be done on the Bloodhound?
Well, most of the production work has finished. We've just got the areas actually where we've got South African companies involved. Pointing antennas have built the antenna system that will enable us to upload all the data and the 12 high-definition camera information to the MTN towers. So that work has been going on, is crucial to us keeping our promise that wherever you were in the world, you will be able to see the car run if you're not able to get to Pan. And also, on your computer, you would be able to see all the data channels, everything about how the engines are performing, the forces on the wheels, how Andy is performing in the cockpit, and also one of the channels will be his monitoring his heart. So we'll see just how fast his heart beats when he's approaching supersonic speeds. So we expect the car to run in total probably 50 times So in the first phase of running, 3 months, probably maybe 30 times, building up the speed very slowly. And so after 2 or 3 months, we hope to be up to the first major record, which will be 800 miles an hour, which is almost 1,300 kilometres an hour. It's about 1,280 kilometres an hour. And that will increase the current record, which is 1,228 kilometres an hour.
You need 20 million pounds. Richard Noble has alluded that there are negotiations currently underway. How confident are you that you'll get the funds?
Well, we need, in actual fact, it's about 10 million to get the car here. It'll probably be, that's to get us here to finish the first phase of runs, and probably the same amount again, so another 10 million. So that's 2 lots of 200 million rand. 10 million pounds is about half of what Ferrari spend just on one weekend's Grand Prix. So it sounds a huge amount of money, but we're looking at a huge amount of research that's gone into the materials of the car, the aerodynamics. So there's spin-off into other industries. Just something as simple as a wheel, which we take for granted, will be spinning at over 10,000 revolutions per minute. That's 170 revolutions per second. Now, the companies and the research organisations and the universities involved with that are looking to see how we can use new materials, perhaps even manufacturing the wheel from composite materials rather than solid aluminium aerospace. That would help to reduce the car's weight. So there's still a lot of research to go on. So hence the first phase of runs, the target is 800 miles an hour, almost 1,300 kilometres an hour. And then the following year, or when we've managed to get the funding and reduce the weight of the car, hopefully that will still be in 2017, but maybe early 2018, we'll be going for that magical 1,000 miles an hour, which is 1,610 kilometres an hour.
Thank you very much. That's Dave Rowley. He's the representative for the Bloodhound in South Africa. I'm just a teeny bit disappointed. Was hoping to see the Bloodhound performing at Axkempan in 2016 already, but for that I'll wait another couple of months, hoping to see that live, that record attempt. For those of you who won't be as lucky as I am, as Dave said, you'll be able to catch all that action live on the internet when they broadcast it live. So everybody will be able to witness that. With that, it's back to the studio.
Yeah, interesting story. Very nice story. Supersonic car will attempt new land speed. World record, that is. Now it's going to happen in 2017, we've been told. Very nice story there from Ulrich Hendricks from our Northern Cape Bureau there in Kimberley. Time for us to take a little break now. That was a quick look at some of what's happening in the regions here in South Africa. After a short break, Kendall will give us a sports update. Don't go away.
As stories are broken around the world, SABC makes sure you do not miss out. As the stories unfold throughout the day, News at 8 updates all newsworthy stories worldwide. Globally, we are there. Locally, we leave no story untold. Make a date with News at 8 every Saturday and Sunday on SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back. I'm Kendall Makhamat, and our top story in this particular sports bulletin is about cricket, where South Africa's national cricket team has come back from the ashes to beat England with an emphatic 5-wicket win in the 5th and final ODI in Cape Town. The Proteas became only the third team in the game's history to overcome a 2-game deficit and seal the win with a 3-2 series win.
To the delight of the Newlands faithful, the Proteas' near-impossible fight back from 2-0 down in the series extended to the finale in the mother city. For the third consecutive match, the South Africans won the toss and sent the English in to bat first. In an inspired bowling change, leg spinner Imran Tahir was brought on in the 5th over, and he immediately found the early breakthrough, dismissing Jason Roy. But AB de Villiers tried a more unorthodox strategy for the next few overs in a desperate attempt to get rid of England's most dangerous in-form batsman, Joe Root. And South Africa leaked runs as the visitors went from 15 for 1 to 76 for 1. It was the spin of Tahir that again produced a wicket for the Proteas as he trapped Root leg before for 27. Helped along by the poor shot selection of England's batsmen, the Proteas' attack ensured that they took wickets at regular intervals, not allowing the tourists to gain much momentum. And apart from Alex Hales, none of the other batsmen made any significant contributions. Hales finally converted his 5th straight 50 in the series, notching up his second one-day ton with a boundary. Kaki Surabada, David Visser and Imran Tahir pitched in with 3 scalps apiece, and the English were rolled over for a well below par 236 in just 45 overs. Seamer Rhys Topley almost single-handedly brought his side back into the contest early in South Africa's chase. He scalped Quinton de Kock and Faf du Plessis in consecutive deliveries, and in his next over accounted for Riley Rousseau, reducing the Proteas to 22 for 3. But it was Hashim Amla and captain AB de Villiers to the rescue. The pair wielded the willow with both players bringing up half-centuries in their massive 125-run partnership to steer the South Africans out of danger. And when Amla departed for a crucial 59, the home side needed another 90-odd runs from the last 20 overs. De Villiers then partnered the big-hitting David Visser to take his side over the line. Making his 200th appearance in the green and gold, he made it a memorable one, notching up his 24th ODI century. South Africa coasted to 237 for 5 as de Villiers finished unbeaten on 101, with Visser on a career-best 41 as the Proteas clinched their 5-wicket victory with 6 overs to spare and an historic 3-2 series win. Samantha Mari, SABC News.
Now from the short format of the game to the long format, where Australia was simply relentless in their first test match against New Zealand in Wellington. The Aussies produced an emphatic victory on day 4, winning by an innings and 52 runs to lead the 2-match series 1-0.
Australia was in the driving seat from day 1 of this test at the Basin Reserve, having bowled the Kiwis out for 183 in their first innings and then posting a huge first innings total of 562. The home side was always chasing the game. They resumed their second innings on 178 for the loss of 4 wickets on the morning of day 4. The Aussie bowling attack made full use of the movement off the pitch, making it almost impossible for New Zealand to get into any rhythm. Henry Nicholls put up a lone resistance up front, notching up a half-century, but when he departed for 59, the Kiwis were staring down the barrel at 218 for 7 just before lunch. Tim Southey and Mark Craig entertained fans with some big shots toward the end of the innings, but an Aussie victory was never in any doubt. Spinner Nathan Lyon took 4 wickets, while Mitchell Marsh pitched in with 3 scalps as New Zealand was bowled out for 327, conceding a crushing defeat by an innings and 52 runs with a day to spare. Australia now has a chance to regain the #1 ranking in tests if they win the second test that gets underway in Christchurch on Saturday. Samantha Mari, SABC News.
Now to football. Here's a quick summary of all the results from the Absa Premiership's action over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. On Saturday, Maritzburg United 1-0 against Platinum Stars. Golden Arrows beating Polokwane City 2-1 at the old Peter Mokaba Stadium. And then Jomo Cosmos getting one of their rare wins for this season, beating Free State Stars 1-0 at Orland Park. Then as you just heard, as you heard earlier on, SuperSport United giving Stuart Baxter a very welcome Valentine's Day gift, beating University of Pretoria 2-0. That's Baxter's first win in charge of SuperSport United. Bloem Celtic losing 1-0 to Chippa United. Where we quick look see at the log standings. We're starting with the top 8. You'll see in the top 8 there has not been much movement because we'll find out soon enough. I'll be reminding you soon enough that Sundowns and Chiefs and some of the other teams were in CAF competitions, but Golden Arrows moving upwards, SuperSport United moving upwards. They've played 18 and 19 respectively, both sitting on 24 points. It's just the goal difference that separates them. We'll go through to the bottom half of the log. In the bottom half of the log, you'll notice that there is a lot of movement here. From 9 through to 12, everybody's slipping down, from Pirates, Ajax, Bloem, Free State Stars, all slipping downwards from where they were last week to where they are now. 23 points and 22 points. Not much separates these four teams. We're all trying to get into the top 8. In the bottom, you'll see that University of Pretoria and Maritzburg United are seemingly set to stay in the basement of the league. Now, staying with results from the weekend, it was on the whole successful for South African teams taking part in CAF competitions. Starting with the Champions League, not so successful for Mamelodi Sundowns. They had to travel to Zimbabwe to get beaten, but they were beaten by Chicken Inn FC 1-0 over the weekend on Saturday. But Kaizer Chiefs doing extremely well, beating Volcan Club de Moroni 4-0. Eric Matoho getting a brace just before and just after half-time. Now we'll go through to the Confederations Cup. In the Confederations Cup, you'll notice that both matches were played on the 13th of February, the Saturday. Lifestars FC losing 3-0 to Bidvest Wits. And in Ajax Cape Town, after all that hoo-ha, they go to Dundo in Angola and they beat Sagrada Esperança 2-1. Now, staying with football news, it was Super Sunday in the English Premier League as the league's top 4 teams faced off. Tottenham beat Manchester City 2-1 at the Etihad Stadium to stay second in the English Premier League table, and Arsenal broke Leicester Hearts, beating them 2-1. All the while in Spain's La Liga, Barcelona was schooling a helpless Celta Vigo, whipping them 6-1. Here are the highlights.
Okasaki's in the middle. Oh, Vardy's gone to ground. Yeah. Penalty for Leicester City. Jamie Vardy belts it in and keeps on dreaming. Space for Bellerin. Aimed in at Giroud. Walcott! 1-1! Arsenal with an extra man need this. Ozil clips it in. Welbeck! There's your fairy tale! Danny Welbeck! Back and scoring! Deep breath from Harry Kane. Tottenham have the lead. Silva. Clichy. And it was Iheanacho right on cue. In for Eriksson. And Eriksson has snaffled one for Tottenham.
It's Messi. It is magnificent from Lionel Messi. Passes on to Messi. Messi to Suarez. Sensational Barcelona goal. Messi, wonderful strength towards Neymar, who does the impossible. Barcelona, especially this Hollywood 3. Messi is brought down, and Messi is given the penalty. Lionel Messi passes the ball on. It's testimonial football. He was on 300 goals now, and that's something I've only ever seen before in an end-of-season friendly game. This is a La Liga match, and it is completely outrageously entertaining.
That's why it's called the beautiful game, isn't it? Now, FIFA's appeal committee is due to hear the appeal of UEFA President Michel Platini against his 8-year ban from football in Zurich, Switzerland today. Platini and FIFA President Sepp Blatter were both banned from the sport in December for ethics violations. FIFA's ethics committee found Platini and Blatter guilty of breaches regarding a 27 million rand payment to the Frenchman in 2011. But the two insist the payment was made following a verbal agreement between the pair when Platini worked for Blatter from 1998 to 2002. Both Platini and Blatter have denied any wrongdoing. Blatter's appeal against his own ban is due to be heard tomorrow morning. And England ran out comfortable 40-9 winners against Italy in the last of the weekend's Six Nations matches at the Stadio Olimpico in Italy. Eddie Jones's England team now tops the Six Nations table after the second round of the competition.
After a sluggish start to the tournament, England were again slow out of the blocks. Both teams exchanged early penalties before George Ford finally breached Italy's defensive line for the first try. Italy regrouped, however, and cut the deficit down to just 2 points at the halftime break. Those would be Italy's last points for the match. England came out of the break and piled on the pressure, and it soon told. Jonathan Joseph scored the first of his 3 tries in the 53rd minute.
All of Italy's hard work.
Joseph was on hand again to collect a Danike grabber, and soon after completed his treble with a powerful charge through 3 tackles.
England upping the pressure stakes. Joseph searching for a hat-trick and getting a hat-trick.
Owen Farrell rounded off the performance with the 5th try late in the match. England is tied on 4 points with France, but go to the summit by virtue of a superior points difference. Nigelo Madala, SABC News.
England have started to find the right notes.
And finding quick ball at the end. Italy's shaken by what's happened.
Right, that's where we stop with the sports. Elvis President standing by. Shortly he's going to be premiering a brand new slot with Dr. Leonard Martin. Be sure to stay tuned for that. Do not go anywhere.
Now that's your weather, continental. But welcome back. This is our news slot every Monday with social commentator Dr. Leonard Martin as we reflect at the major news stories that unfolded during the week and how they impact on us as a society. Dr. Martin, a very warm welcome to you.
Good afternoon, Elvis, and good afternoon to the listeners.
It was a very busy week. We first had the State of the Nation address. That was at the end of the week. And then, of course, we also had the Concord decision earlier this week and a number of other stories that's breaking around that. But first and foremostly, your thoughts on the State of the Nation address where constitutionalism was at the order of the day.
Absolutely, and I think you put your finger on it, that I think for every South African, the last or the latest Sona address is of great significance for the next 5 to 10 years in terms of prospects relating to the economy, but also in terms of the social and economic realities confronting every South African, from the point of view of taxation to the quality of life, issues of basic foodstuff prices, etc., etc. These are the immediate issues that created huge expectations on the Sona address by the President.
Now, the Constitutional Court case, they reserved judgment on the Nkandla matter after the court was asked to clarify the powers of the public protector. Why is that case very important for South Africa and for our Constitution?
Well, I think what's important, we received an education in terms of the stability of the pillars that hold our democracy together. I think what's also important, it was an education in terms of the parameters of accountability that our legislature, the ordinary MPs, have to abide by. So there are major issues of values in relation to our democracy, but also in terms of the individual responsibilities of MPs to the legislature and the quality of the legislature in terms of upholding law and policy in relation to the country.
Would you perhaps say that there was perhaps a lack of focus on education, particularly funding higher education? We've seen the hashtags school fees must fall, school books being reviewed for racist content, and what this means for the nature of education and multiculturalism in our country.
Absolutely. The issue of multiculturalism, or the South African approach to multiculturalism, has been almost absent in our discussions on racism, but also in terms of curricular content. Elvis, the significance of school or schooling is sometimes underplayed. Schooling plays a major role in terms of the notion of differences, ethnic differences, and how we are located within the social hierarchy. So the content, the review of content, will now bring to the fore our discussion of what South Africa means by multiculturalism, or the rainbow concept that has been so easily put into the public sphere.
Why was this vital matter previously neglected, you think?
I think it's a very interesting question. We've been discussing racism and its impact, the legacy of racism, but I think what we have been perhaps skirting is what will be the South African paradigm in relation to solving the question of differences, cultural and otherwise. And that's where, for some reason, our discussion, our public discussion, it cannot just be for academics, our public discussion of, and the internalizing of that discussion of what is our approach to multiculturalism. How do we crack the nut of racism, starting with what we are taught via the school books.
Now, the President mentioned about racism in the beginning of his speech, focusing on the Racism Week that's coming up. Is that enough, or do we need to do more as a society?
We need to do exceptionally more, taking the period over 300 years of colonization and apartheid. We need to begin to address more directly the Eurocentric content of school book learning, starting from the lowest grades. We can no longer take for granted that education is just education, almost business as usual. We have to begin through school book learning to excavate what no longer serves the future of South African society. And that's where the multiculturalism approaches of South African society comes into. And maybe I should just add, we cannot continue having a debate as to whether South Africa is the proverbial zebra with either white or black stripes. We have to begin transcending that in terms of bringing the notion of social cohesion as a living day-to-day matter in our society.
Mm-hmm. Now, for the very first time, the President touched on a very sensitive topic, and that's the economy.
Absolutely.
The growth of the economy and how do we get there. But there's also another a point that is missing there, and that is the growth of the unemployment figures in our country.
In fact, both are, part of the same coin. Mm-hmm. What we also need to do is to advance from the Sona speech or the Sona projections to unpacking what growth means when we've had growth without growth in employment. Are we actually beginning to move to a different, predictable policy, both for the nation, but also for the investors? This will be the issue in the coming period. What do we mean by growth? And of course, it is expected that the South African population increasingly will become participants in this vital discussion.
There will be some austerity measures, but what do you think is next for the implementation of some of the budget proposals done by the President?
Well, the Sona speech was directed primarily at calming the jittery nerves of those who set the rates in relation to our finances. But nevertheless, they too have to abide by the fact that substantial growth should also mean putting into practice or implementing the meaning of radical economic transformation. For example, if we take the micro and small business sector, which for years has been predicted as the driver for growth in employment, I think that will be a major barometer in terms of the policies and their predictability.
And how does that all impact what we've discussed now on our society?
Well, our society is at the center, whether you're an investor or whether you're a worker. The future of South African society is at the center of how our economic policies are predictably implemented. The issue is most of our young people, the majority who come out of our schools, are looking for an improvement in quality of life, but also to having a future in this country.
Dr. Martin, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you very much.
Now that was social commentator Dr. Leonard Martin on his take on some of the major stories that unfolded during the course of the week and how that impact on us as a society. Now that's how we come to the end of today's show. We'd like to thank you for watching, and we hope to see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place, right here on Newsroom, your favorite channel, Channel 404 on SABC News. From myself, Elvis Preston, and the rest of my team members, they're not here for now, but they are saying goodbye to you as well. We'll see you tomorrow. Arrivederci.